Is yes, being picked up. Sorry, I'm just adjusting what I may need. Or won't. I don't really know. So this should be better, I think. I have my water. Alright, I guess we will just begin. Hello, hello, Surplus. How are you? Excuse me. We're just closing out some stuff. I think I'll close this as well, sure. And close this, and open up that, and type that. Good. Oh, you're doing good. I'm glad to hear that. Oh, just give me a second, actually. My dryer just finished. I have to make sure my sheets are in that I'm gonna sleep with on the bed tonight are in the dryer, so I need to just put it to dry again because it doesn't dry properly. So I have to put it for 2 cycles. Okay, I'm back. Just wait for Dionea to arrive, and then I guess we will begin. Because I don't want to... Hello. Yes. So either something is being tapped on, or I am tapping on something. The sound of muffled footsteps stepped in front of the door to my room. Moment of silence, as if whomever they belonged to was ascertaining if I was inside. How are you doing, Dionea? Of all things I should have been doing, I continued on with my restless slumber. I was very much conscious, but my body hadn't caught up yet, even with danger bearing down on me from just beyond the door. It was as if I was completely paralyzed, unable to move. Without a doubt, this was sheer terror. Please, just leave. Hey, why isn't my body awake yet? If they came into my room right now, then... I sprung to my feet and threw my covers at my mom, who was opening the door.
何ケイチどうしたの
ごめん。寝ぼけてた。
I thought it was still 1 or 2 a.m. The morning sun was already streaming through the gap between the curtains. It felt nothing like morning. Yesterday I must have fallen asleep right after that. And I should have gotten a full 10 hours of rest. It didn't feel like that at all. My internal clock was completely screwed up and my sense of balance felt off. I felt feverish enough that it was clear to me that I was still not well.
どうケイチ体の調子はどう学校行けそう
I felt far from well enough. No, I wasn't mentally fit to go. I was still plagued with the terror from yesterday. If I had swallowed that needle, what would have happened? What if I had pierced my tongue? It was undoubtedly a murderous intent. But I don't think that's all it was. If they really wanted to kill me, then there were other, more certain ways to do it. They wouldn't resort to such dubious methods as having me swallow a needle. Meaning, I didn't want to believe it, but going that far was just a threat from Rena and Mion. Aren't you glad you didn't die? But next time we'll use a more assured method. Like that. Something like sending a letter with a razor inside would have been a joke compared to
ちゃんと
this.
病院は行った？お薬は飲んだの？
まあ一応。
Something about my mom's dubious gaze bothered me. She seemed more concerned about her son missing 2 days of school rather than him being sick. It was definitely mental fatigue. I wasn't really physically ill.
一度生活のリズムを崩すとなかなか戻らないんだから。そら、起きて起きて。病は気からって言うのよ。
I'd heard that line many times before. I was given an award in elementary school for having perfect attendance, but it wasn't like I was healthier than everyone.
さあさあ、顔洗ってらっしゃい。ご飯はもうできてるわよ。もうレナちゃんが来るまであんまり時間がないわよ。
Mom's tone meant I couldn't argue about it, so I had to give up on skipping a second day.
そうそう。今の壁にぼたもちを投げつけたのはケイチ？ダメよ、あんなことしちゃ。お父さん、怒ってたわよ。
Nothing much, Diana. I'm just chilling. Yeah, that's basically it. Looking forward for some more Higurashi. I didn't like think about it all too much, but this morning I did. I was looking forward to playing it. I was interested to see where it was going. I didn't feel particularly guilty for doing it, so I didn't have much of a reaction. Also, Mom didn't question me any further about it. She headed back downstairs after she was certain I was getting up. When Mion said as she left yesterday, "I hate it if you miss school tomorrow," came back and dwelled in the back of my head. What does she mean by that? I didn't have to really think about it. She was saying, "Don't be absent." It's definitely interesting, but I don't know if I could do that for 7 more chapters, if I'm being honest. It is a bit too long for me, I would say. Taking that a bit further, it was the same as her saying I should just go about living my life as if nothing happened. If I showed any signs of acting unusual, it would probably result in them making their move. If I acted differently, someone like Uishi-san, for example, might end up noticing that something is up. Meaning if I didn't watch my mouth or did anything differently from the norm, in effect, it would end up communicating something to those who were undesirable. And it seems that was something that the girls didn't intend to forgive. So if I just went along as normal, no harm would come to me. Was that how it was going to be? All that misery I experienced up until yesterday would almost creepily just fade away. It was an enticing deal. Just by forgetting everything I'd seen or heard these last few days, I'd be able to keep on living like normal.
そんな虫のいい話あるわけ？
I swallowed hard. I once again deliberated on the idea that I had just rejected. Mion was probably a good person who had her friends at heart. She was giving me, who had mistakenly broken some rule of theirs, a chance. Was what I did really something so unforgivable? Mion had given me another chance. She was saying if I just forgot everything and kept living on like I had been, I'd be forgiven.
Keiichi! ご飯冷めちゃうわよ。
Nothing much. It's just Keiichi pondering about life. That's all you missed, really?
急いで降りてらっしゃい。早くしないとレナちゃんが来ちゃうわよ。
あ、今行くよ。
I crammed my textbooks into my bag and hastily made my way downstairs. I picked at my somewhat bland breakfast. It seemed I didn't have much time. It was already past when I usually met up with Rena. Given yesterday's event, she'd probably be here in the next 5 minutes. I needed to be ready to head to school by then. I had to forget everything that had happened the past 2 days. Surplus and I are going to finish Chapter 8 try to finish Chapter 8 tonight. Nice! How long do you guys think you have again? Forget it all and return to my normal life. For this to be normal, I have to be where I normally meet up with Rena. Today of all days, the rice was dry and hard to get down. Ding dong! I jumped at the sound and dropped my chopsticks. A chime signaled that Rena had arrived. Mom hurried me along.
ほら、レナちゃん来ちゃったわよ。
Maybe 5 to 6, depends. I'm unsure. Well, it seems like you guys will have a lot to do today. A lot to do today. If it's 5 to 6 hours.
急いで急いで。
Or even longer. I would assume that the last chapters would probably be longer. My mother's merry smile and my gloomy face were polar opposites. Honestly, I was reluctant to see Rena, who was waiting there on the other side of the door. We're gonna do the epilogue tomorrow, most likely. Oh, okay, cool. The Rena on the other side. Was it the Rena I knew? I couldn't keep her waiting. I needed to do things as usual. An invigorating greeting filtered in from across the doorway.
ケイチ君、遅かったから来てみたけど、今日はどうかな？かな？
The manner in which Rena was concerned was, without a doubt, the Rena I knew. That was probably only if I reciprocated. Forget everything from yesterday, pretend as though nothing had happened. Forget about the gruesome dismemberment. Forget about the mysterious deaths that happened the following years. Forget about the people falling to their death and the terminal illness and the suicide and the fatal beatings, the disappearances. Forget it. Forget all of it. Forget that Rena and Mion were scary, of course. Forget it all. Forget about all of it. Forget about the mochi too. Forget. Rena once again asked to make sure.
学校、行けそう？
あ、大丈夫だよ。
よかった。じゃあ行こう。みーちゃん待ってるよ。
Rena showed me her usual bright smile. I couldn't find any hint of deceit in her expression. My nervousness dissipated, giving way to relief.
なのにさとこちゃんね、絶対にできるって意地になっちゃって。
As we were walking, Rena talked a lot about different stuff. More so than usual.
それで？
さとこちゃん不吉祥だから何度やってもできないの。はう、かいかったんだよ。
Everything Rena talked about was just silly nonsense, so I just replied every so often and laughed from time to time. It was a rather laid-back conversation. We passed by one of our neighbors and they called out to us.
ケイチちゃんにレナちゃん。今日はちょっと遅いんじゃないの？ミオンちゃん、先に行くって言ってたわよ。
ああ、みーちゃん怒ってるかな？怒ってるかな？早く行こう、ケイチ君。
After greeting our neighbor with a smile, Rena turned back to me and poked her tongue out. Not expecting that, I couldn't help but crack a smile.
あ、ケイチ君笑った。
なんだよ。
Rena stopped and stared at me.
ケイチ君、今朝もなんか元気なかったから、まだ風邪が治らないのかなって思ってたけど、大丈夫みたいだね。だね。
With a grin, she gently poked my cheek. It was a bright, sincere smile. Hey, Keiichi Maebara. How can you still doubt Rena after she shows you a smile like that? Maybe I just had a high fever up until today and I imagined everything that I thought happened because I was bedridden and delirious? I really hoped that was the case. If God would grant me just one wish, there's only one thing that I'd wish for. I would want what happened these past few days. More specifically, from the night of the Watanagashi up until last night. I wanted all of that to never have happened. I wonder how many times I'd wished for this these past few days. As long as Rena kept on smiling like this, I think it might just become reality. So I wanted Rena to keep on smiling. Keep on smiling.
で、ケイチ君。昨日のおはぎ、ちゃんと食べてくれた？
The vain wish of mine was instantly shattered. My heart began palpitating. The relaxed morning mood suddenly became frigid. Rena's smile was the same as usual. Her eyes were gentle as usual. Those mochi yesterday. Did you eat them all? Of course, she wasn't asking the question at face value. In other words, Rena was asking, did you get the message? She was probably trying to convey that.
ケイチ君？
I was reluctant to give an answer. Rena stopped walking and stared deeply
Ah.
into my eyes. Don't hesitate, Keiichi Maebara. Rena was acting the same as always, wasn't she? I needed to respond in my usual way. Naturally, of course. But both my throat and my mouth had gone dry, and my lips were stuck together. Hurry and answer, Keiichi. Not that much time had passed. I could still keep the conversation going naturally. I had to say something quickly. Rena playfully mimicked what I said when I finally squeaked out something. Rena's reaction was still normal. It seemed that there wasn't as long of a pause as I had thought. Somehow I finally squeaked out the rest.
うまかった。
However, my strained efforts neither sullied nor brightened Rena's expression. For a moment I panicked, thinking I'd replied incorrectly. But after a few moments, Rena broke into her usual soft smile and giggled with a joyful voice that seemed to echo through the morning air. Being strung along by that laugh, I couldn't help but laugh as well.
そうなんだ。で、全部食べたのかな？かな？
My timid smile froze again. Did you make it without swallowing the sewing needle? Was that what she was asking? If I'd swallowed it, then I wouldn't be here.
いや、全部は食べきれなかったからさ。まだ残ってるんだよ。
I was scared out of my wits, but that's how I played it.
あれれ？どれがレナが作ったのか当てる宿題はどうなっちゃったのかな？
あの宿題って今日までだったっけ？
うん、今日までなんだよ。みーちゃん怒るよ。きっと罰ゲームだね。
We both laughed at each other again. To a casual observer, it was just a typical morning. If I could just let myself believe, then even I'd think it was just the usual morning routine. But I was certain I wasn't mistaken. There was something unimaginable buried beneath the facade of this giggling Rena.
嘘だ！
I recalled that unexpected, piercing voice that I could hardly believe came from Rena's mouth. The moment that image crossed my mind, I felt a cold, cold sweat trickle down my back. Was it only at that particular time that something evil had possessed Rena? No, that was wrong. That was still Rena. Uishi-san told me, didn't he?
実は調べてみたら、竜宮さんは引っ越しの少し前に学校で謹慎処分を受けているんですよ。なんでも学校中のガラスを割って回ったんだとか。
Rena had a disorder that normal people didn't. No matter how pleasantly she smiled, that fact would not change. But I couldn't even imagine how she looked as she broke all the glass throughout the school. One thing I knew was that it wasn't something spur of the moment. If it was some sudden outburst of anger, then maybe she'd break a pane or two. She broke all of the windows, all throughout her school. Just imagine going through your own school, breaking the windows with a bat. Swinging full force at each pane of glass, one after another, paying no heed to the flying shards. Your classmates aghast, unable to move from the sudden turn of events. I wonder where she could have found the most windows lined up in a row. Probably the hallway. Walk, wind up, walk, wind up. It was difficult for me to connect that horrifying image with Rena smiling at me right now. But I just had to imagine it. Impossible because it was unimaginable. That naive way of thinking no longer worked. The unpleasant, piercing sound of shattered glass, the crunching noise as Rena treads across the broken shards, walking towards me. Rena's classmates going pale as they forget to even breathe. I wondered what they did as Rena came closer, breaking windows along her path. Did they earnestly try to bring her to her senses by saying something? Or did they jump at her, trying to stop her savagery? Or did they run to the staff room to call for the teachers? Probably none of those. In the face of that blood-curdling sight of Rena bursting window after window, undoubtedly, All they could do was silently clear a path for her. Dumbfounded, just clearing the path for Rena to continue. It would be cruel to blame anyone for looking the other way. No, they weren't simply looking the other way. They knew it was the only way they could protect themselves. I know, this is a very strange angle. I completely agree. If they had done something differently from the rest, they may have suddenly found themselves as Rena's new target. What would Rena have done to whoever attracted her attention? The answer was obvious. She would have undoubtedly acted according to her whims. Meaning I would, be the next window. Rena, staring into my eyes, shards of glass crunching and crackling underfoot as she drew closer. I was also drawn into her eyes, paralyzed. Then Rena struck me with the bat over and over again, like I was one of those windows. I crouched down onto the floor, desperately protecting my head. Rena didn't care whether it was my head or my back. Zealously, she hit me again and again. What kind of expression was she making as she was doing this over and over again? I peered up to see. Her expression was so indifferent. It was completely unnerving. It's because no matter how many times she struck me, I didn't make as pleasant a sound as the other windows. She struck me continuously, over and over again. The sound Renner wanted didn't come out. Our classmates standing around didn't try to stop her. They didn't want to be the next window. Somebody save me. Turning a blind eye unless we're hanging out. But of course, everyone in class scrambled to obtain the highest standardized test scores. They gained nothing from saving a cram school tryhard like me. Eventually, there would be a faint sound, similar to when you crack open a walnut, and some sort of reddish black spray would shoot out. Anyway, it wasn't that Rena momentarily lost herself in anger. After forcing myself to breathe and calming down my heart, I recalled what Uishi-san told me.
でですね、そのカウンセリングをした医師のカルテに、レナさんの会話内容が記載されているんですがね、その中に出てくるんですよ、結構。
何がです？
出てくるんですよ、お社様って単語が。
Following that, Rena was suspended and had regular examinations at the hospital. Then, as Rena was undergoing counseling, she said it over and over. Oyashiro-sama.
お社様っていう幽霊みたいなものがですね、夜な夜な自宅にやってくるっていうんですよ。枕元に立って自分を見下ろすんだって。
That was only a piece of their conversation, so I still couldn't see the big picture. It was by no means a happy little conversation. And what Rena did? Was she saying that ghastly incident was a result of her being possessed by Oyashiro-sama? Up until now, I didn't want to believe in Oyashiro-sama's curse. That's why I wanted to say the mysterious deaths every year happened because of some sort of conspiracy. Every time I talked with Uishi-san, I was more certain that the deaths were the work of men, and not some curse. Except, if it was people perpetrating the incidents, my friends were somehow deeply connected. If I refused to believe that the curse was real, then I would have to believe those who acted the kindest to me were deeply involved in the incidents. Why? How? For what reason? Was Rena? Was everybody? It was much more painful and troublesome than accepting that it was just Oyashiro-sama's curse. In the aftermath, Rena had admitted to her doctor that it was because she was possessed by Oyashiro-sama. I felt a strange sense of relief from that. So that was how it was. There wasn't a second side to Rena. She did that because she was possessed by something strange like Oyashiro-sama. It wasn't Rena's fault. Oyashiro-sama was the one to blame. I knew. This was all backwards. Refusing to believe there was a curse, I wanted there to be a human perpetrator. Now that my close friends were the ones under suspicion, I changed my beliefs at my own convenience, saying it was Oyashiro-sama's curse to blame. Which was the better choice? Accepting that Oyashiro-sama's curse exists? Or that Rena and the rest of them were deeply involved in the string of mysterious deaths? I didn't want to think about it. If I just didn't think about it, I'd be able to continue the same as always. I wanted to believe that. But that was no longer possible. I had received their message. It was pathetic of me to try and bend the meaning to my own convenience, regardless of whether my opponent were a human or a curse. I won't let it kill me. As if I would just bend over and give in, for no good reason at all.
ケイチくん、さっきから変な顔してる。なんでだろう。
Inhaling sharply upon hearing Rena's voice, I came back to my senses. Before I'd realized it, we were already at the entrance. Shaking my head a few times, I exercised all those terrifying thoughts. No matter how you looked at it, there's no way Rena could have done such terrible things. It was like I was trying to placate myself. As I slid the door open, a blackboard eraser loaded with chalk dropped down on my head the moment I stepped into the classroom. The chalk dust went into my eyes, inducing a brief moment of agony.
鶴休みのケイチさんにはお似合いですことよ。ケイチもレナもおはようございますです。おはよう、さとこちゃんにリカちゃん。
Not quite in the mood for it, I didn't really react to Satoko's trap. Satoko braced herself as I passed by, expecting me to attack her. She seemed a bit disappointed as I simply walked by silently.
何なんですの？張り合いがありませんわ。ケイチ、まだ本調子じゃないみたいです。だから、今日は加減してあげて、ね。
Suddenly there was a slap down my shoulder. It hurt a bit.
よ、ケイちゃん。しっかり休んできた？
It was Mion. My mind was full with the stuff about Rena, but Mion was also a party of interest. Remember, Keiichi, that hawkish gaze from yesterday.
ああ、おはよ
なんだ。ずいぶんと覇気のない挨拶じゃん。差し入れのおはぎ、ちゃんと食べてくれなかったの？
I'm like this because I ate them. Those words were itching to be
う。
blurted
やっ
out.
ぱ食欲がなくてさ、いくつかは食べたけど、だいぶ残しちゃったんだ。
あれ？じゃあ宿題は？どれがレナの手作りかってのの回答は？
ケイチくん宿題忘れなんだって。
ありゃー。じゃあ仕方ないね。罰ゲーム。ひひひひひ。
Flashing a lurid smile, Mion returned to her seat. There was nothing from our exchanges that would cause our classmates to suspect anything was amiss. But of course, anyone listening to our conversations up until this morning wouldn't see anything suspicious. That was why it was so frightening. They acted in a way that, regardless of whatever happened to Keiichi Maebara, no one would ever suspect them. That fact had me terrified. Soon, the teacher came. After she asked how I felt and took attendance, another dull, ordinary day began. It's Chie. Okay. A lot of inner thoughts, this one, so far. Which makes sense. He has to process a lot. Excuse me, just wait. This free study period was a convenient time to consider where I stood. I gently closed my eyes and pondered the ridiculous position I was in right now. First of all, what I shouldn't forget was how dangerous of a situation I was in. I had fallen out of favor with them. After interacting with Uishi-san multiple times, I could see it as I was getting closer to the heart of the matter. I don't necessarily think that's the case, though. I think that the only thing I don't get is the sewing needle. That's the only thing that I don't get right now. But I really don't think that they've fallen out of, like, he's fallen out of favor with them. I think they still are interested in, like, being friends with him, and they still enjoy his company and all that. So I think so far that's, like, what I would say is wrong and what he's thinking, I think. What are my thoughts on everything? I think there's definitely some way they can tell what he's thinking. I don't know when it happens, because, I mean, there's still that entire place with Tomitake-san and the woman. I can't remember her name. But they literally answered every single question he thought in his head, and he did not question it. Right? Like, he just understood that, oh yeah, he was just like, oh yeah, like, something was weird that night. There was that. There was... So I think there's something about them being able to somehow read his thoughts. I think... I don't understand the sewing needle and the mochi. I really don't understand why they did that. Like, he's like saying, oh, they tried to kill him or something like that, but I really don't think that's the case. Like, maybe it was like a threatening thing, you know, as he said, but I don't know. Something about that just seems very off to me. Like, why would Rena make one mochi only? Like, that just seems like a very odd thing to do. Especially mochi being like a very tiny thing. You usually make a batch of them. That seems very strange to me. But, like, I can't think of a reasoning why they would do that, other than what he's explaining here. But I just don't know the full picture. I don't know, I mean, I'm assuming that Rena did tell them everything. I don't know why they're so sussed out about him going and talking to the detective. I don't know about that. Like, why they don't want the detective finding something out. Like, I don't know what he could find that has them like that. I mean, I guess it's, the entire thing is that the demon's curse, right? Or sorry, Oyashiro-sama's curse. And it was the same thing yesterday about, it's like, if you dig into the matter, you can be in danger. Or, no, it was the other thing. Yeah, if by not saying anything, you are on the demon's good side. Like, so you won't be demoned away. So I think that's part of the reason. So I think there's something that, like, they could be concerned for him, but they don't want to tell him because that would be talking with the demon's curse. So that would be, or there's a higher chance of them being demoned away. So that's their way of saying, like, yo, stop, without actually telling him. But at the same time, the town is, like, apparently a town where that is, like, Hinamizawa was known in the past as the demon town, so I don't know. There's a lot of things going on. And then there's that entire segment in the tip section yesterday with Uishi. With, you know, just him trying to solve the case and everything, and there's, like, just a bunch of information there. I can't remember all of it, because it's come to the end of the stream, but I remember some stuff I thought were strange. So yeah. That's what I'm thinking so far. You have any idea what the curse actually is? What do you mean, like... Like, you mean why it's happening? Or, like, what do you mean by what the curse actually is? Yeah? No. I have no clue for that. I have no clue for that. Because we know that it's happening to these four, but why these four in specific? And Keiichi's now in the middle of them, so something's going to happen to him as well, I'm assuming. Because they're not all outsiders. So, I don't get that. No, I have no clue why the curse would be happening. as I've been saying, I think the curse is real. I don't think it's people. I think there are too many coincidences and too many things. Like, as I was saying, like for the deaths, one death, it's just a murder. Second death, that's a coincidence. Third death and more, that's a pattern. Okay? And there's some reason for that. Now, if the curse could be people who believe in Oyashido-sama and are doing the actual killing themselves, I would still argue that is possibly Oyashido-sama's curse still, right? But there's the other thing. We're still figuring out that we just figured out yesterday. The man always is dead. The woman gets kidnapped. Or in this case, there's also the case of the family. So the woman got killed and the son got kidnapped. Or demoned away, I guess is the better way. That is like more likely to me as well to be, the curse. And then I don't even know who Satoshi is. Like, I really hope we get more insight on that. Who Satoshi was to this group. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. But so far, I'm of the opinion that it is real. Because there is not enough evidence for it to be people. There are too many unanswered questions. He told me that Satoshi was the kid who was Satoko's older brother. Right? That's what he told me. But I don't know who he was in relation to the group. I didn't know what the group think of him. I didn't know if he was like basically Keiichi before Keiichi came in. I didn't know if he like hearing the facts from Oishi and hearing the opinions of the group and their point of view are two different things. The warning yesterday with the mochi was a good indicator of that. No, calling it a warning was just my habit of understating things. It probably had no meaning beyond stunting my progress and buying themselves some time. Until they had a method of completely erasing me. They were just biding their time. Even though they were keeping me under their thumb with threats, it didn't change the fact that I knew too much. The chilling sensation on my desk. Oh, and that's another thing. How do they know what I'm talking about with Uishi? How'd they even know I was even at the restaurant? Like, there's a lot of just weird stuff. There's a lot of weird stuff, I think. Like, how'd they even find out about Oishi? Because one time I was called out, right? One time I was called out, and the other time I was just picked up for lunch. Like, it's very strange. Like, maybe you can argue, oh yeah, they knew about the phone call because Rena like walked in at that moment. But yeah. The chilling sensation on my desk made me recall Satoshi Hojo, the boy who was using the seed until last year when he disappeared. Was he also similar to me? Did he learn something he shouldn't have and was erased? Damn. I wouldn't let them get rid of me so easily. Like, the only thing I could think of is if they actually didn't go to school that day because they were worried about me, and then they were, like, walking out, right, and saw me being picked up by Uishi for lunch. Like, or just at least one person saw. That's the only thing I could think of. And if it was Mion who saw it. Because she's the one who initially asked me about it. But because, like, we don't actually know if they went to school or not. Like, maybe they just left, I don't know. They could have done that. But were they really trying to kill me? I've had these contradictory feelings for a while now. Even though I suspected them, I felt I had to cover for them. Even having witnessed all their suspicious behavior, a morning like this just made it all seem like an elaborate hoax. No, that's just what I want to believe. Doubting my friends? Covering for them? My life was in danger. Or was it? Actually, I was debating the wrong point. Given my current situation, those points were something that should have been deliberated on a long time ago. But really, Rena and the rest of them, were they actually aiming to kill me? A little voice inside me continued to torment me with these unresolvable trains of thought. Are you an idiot, Keiichi Maebara? The answer should be obvious. But maybe that sewing needle might have been an accident, right? How could you screw up and drop a sewing needle into a piece of mochi? The benefit of the doubt can only go so far. Both Rena and Mion had acted and behaved suspiciously, but maybe it was all some sort of misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? It wasn't just suspicious, it was outright ludicrous, right? Rena just corrected me for lying, and Mion asked me about what I had for lunch. Rena was standing outside my door, eavesdropping for a solid hour? She was probably just waiting for my phone call to end? For a whole hour? Outside your room? And is it normal to go home afterwards without saying anything? You heard from Oishi-san, didn't you? About what Rena did to her former school. But at the hospital she said it was Oyashiro-sama's fault.
いい加減にしろよ、前原圭一。お前、
Dude, you,
命を
please
狙
don't
われ
tell
て
me
る
you
って
said
自
it out
覚があ
loud.
るのかよ。
Please don't tell me you said it out loud. I inadvertently blurted those words out loud. Hearing myself say that so directly left me dumbfounded for a few moments. Afterwards, I had to look around to check if anyone had heard it. My little soliloquy cut a little too close to the truth. Even though I could feel the murderous intent from Rena and the others, part of me somewhere was still trying to deny that. This late in the game, such hesitation could be fatal. I knew that. But I was just your average student, a man living his normal, ordinary life. Do you think I could suddenly believe that my friends, who I'd been happily laughing together with up until last Sunday, now intended to kill me? Right?
甘えるな、圭一。
This time I remembered to keep my voice down so only I could hear it. There's only one thing I now understood. I was too soft. I didn't completely understand how dangerous Rena and the rest of them were. No, I wasn't trying to understand. I was too soft for not listening to Oishi-san when he was earnestly showing me the heart of the matter. I didn't listen because I was too busy pretending to be dejected. I didn't comprehend it. I was just running away. I didn't comprehend it, so nobody had any notion to try and kill me. I needed to get rid of such naive thoughts. As I made that resolution, I heard the bell signaling the end of the class. So soon. The day was already over. I didn't recall eating lunch or doing anything in class. My friends were putting their desks together in preparation for club activities. Not long ago, I probably would have happily jumped into that circle.
あらあら、ケイチさん。帰り支度とはあんまりですことよ。
The way Satoko spoke was so typical and familiar. It almost physically hurt.
あれケイチくん、今日は都合悪いのかな今日こそ二人で大勝利。はあ。
Seeing Rena's expression, which said she was really looking forward to today, was hard to take. Hey, Keiichi. Maybe Oishi-san is just some enormous jerk trying to separate me from the others by lying to me. Trying to expunge this weak-minded thinking, I slapped myself in the face.
ケイチくん
Yeah, was Rena really trying to kill me? Wish someone would tell me it was a hoax. I didn't care if it actually was one or not. I just wanted someone to say it was. Yet another weak-willed thought. How did I ever become this naive?
大丈夫頭痛いの
Apparently that's how my inner dilemma appeared to Rena.
顔色悪いよ。一人で帰れる送ってった方がいいかな。
いや、いい。ごめん。一人で帰れる。部活はみんなでやってくれよ。
Upon hearing that I wasn't going to participate in the club meeting, Mion pouted unhappily.
ケイちゃんがリベンジ熱望してたってんで、今日はせっかくこの間の推理ゲームにしたってのにな。
ケイチさんにはリターンマッチに臨む熱いハートはありませんですの？情けないですわね。
I wouldn't fall for some dumb taunt. Without even a real retort, I just grabbed my bag and was about to get up. Someone's hand perched itself gently on my head.
ケイチ、具合悪そうです。 かわいそうかわいそうですよ。
It was Rika-chan. She was stretched up as far as she could, doing her best to pat my head with her petite hand. It felt so nice, which made things even
ごめ
harder.
んな、みんな。じゃあ、
That's all I said as I quickly left the classroom. They said something to me as I was leaving, but I couldn't make it out. Managed to make it all the way to the entrance in that state of mind. Took out my shoes, put them on, and went forward. Forward. Hardened that heart, Keiichi Maebara. They were, for some unfathomable reason, trying to kill me. They were plotting something dubious, watching my every move. But I couldn't hate them, because weren't they my friends? Part of me lamented my naivety, while another part lamented the fact that I had lost something important by lamenting over it in the first place. It felt like my personality was being ripped in two, along with my body. If this is what Oyashiro-sama's curse was like, then it was just too harsh. Hey, Oyashiro-sama. I was wrong for not believing in your curse, but I believed in it now. Completely. Your curse does exist. So seriously, give me a break. I beg you. Come on. Dinner was unusually bland. It had no flavor or aroma. The miso soup that normally tantalized my appetite instead tasted like nothing but boiled water. Dad was eating with us that night. It was a rare occurrence in this household. When he got into his work, he ate and slept on his own schedule. My dad never cared about the time. Since my dad was at the dinner table, it meant he had either reached a good point to take a break, or he was in a slump.
とにかく作家のモチベーションってものを理解してないんだよ彼は。
タイアップの話だって口約束なんでしょ？そんなに反りが合わないならきっぱりお断りしたら？
助け合いの世界だからお互い様だとは思うんだけど、これじゃ仕事にな。
I wasn't able to pick out much of my mom and dad's conversation, but I could tell it wasn't a very pleasant topic. That, of course, made the disgusting food even less appealing. Staring listlessly at the exchange between my parents, my mind wandered off to the same thought process I had going all day long. Friends close to me? No. They used to be friends, but I could no longer trust them. Right now, I was greatly lacking in allies. People I trusted. People I could depend on when push came to shove. They were something I just didn't have. Having just one ally would be incredibly reassuring in the currently hopeless situation I was in. I put down my chopsticks and looked over at my parents, who were still talking about work. The first course of action that came to mind was to tell my parents everything. Currently, there wasn't a single person from Hinamizawa I could trust 100%. That meant the only people I could trust were my parents. But if I told them everything that happened up until now, would they understand? Rena, for example. That neighborly Rena who was so diligent in looking after me, came to get me every day and sometimes brought a share of what she made. How could I explain that she wanted to try to kill me? No matter how I explained, it would probably be difficult for anyone to comprehend. My somewhat eccentric dad wouldn't understand, and my high-strung mom would probably drag me off to a psychiatrist in the blink of an eye. Sadly, that was the amount of trust that existed in our relationship. Even if they did come to understand, what could they possibly do? Unless they could uncover the truth, they wouldn't be able to protect me. No, by informing them of these unnecessary things, I'd be putting my parents in danger as well. Considering that the victims in the past incidents were often married couples, I couldn't even joke about it. For the entire Maebara family to have an accident or to just vanish into thin air, it was easily possible in Hinamizawa. What was important here was knowing that something unnecessary put you in danger. The most unsettling question was, how did they know that I knew? As long as they didn't know, my parents might not fall victim. That was one way to think about it, I guess. At least it was like that in my case. After I found out, things started becoming odd. In other words, it meant that the following. As long as my parents didn't know anything, nothing would happen to them. Which means that this house would be a safe haven as long as my parents were in. I knew these were just assumptions based on my conjecture on top of conjecture. Wanting this house to be a safe haven, that was the pinnacle of my weak-willed method of thinking. I had to concede that it was just not completely safe. It was only safer than outside. I knew that I couldn't rely on my parents. No, I couldn't risk getting my parents involved. Then the only person that could be my ally would be Oishi-san. Him and him alone. By the way, this phone, how do you take it up to his room? It's connected by a cord. And this was the phone he had in his room. I remember the picture with Rena staring at him into the room. This was the phone that he used. So, how did he take this phone into his room? He was the only person who understood the situation I was in. He didn't care so much about my safety, but he was without a doubt passionate about solving the case. The biggest mystery, yeah. Was a bit frustrating. Uishi-san was basically the whole reason I was in this mess. Now to get out of it, I had to rely on him. Meaning, it was all going according to his devices. It was just my job to look appetizing while bobbing in the waves as bait. Then, when the fish started gathering, Uishi-san would pull up the big haul. It was slightly infuriating, but even I thought that was the best course of action. So then, what should I do? Patience was the first rule of fishing. Just keep waiting until the fish actually bites. But I wasn't simply bait. There were lots of ways for me to struggle before being devoured. When they struck, I needed to somehow dodge just enough and tag out to Uishi-san. No question, it was going to be hard. The timing to bring Uishi-san in would be difficult. He was in the city, not Hinamizawa. So if I phoned him in my moment of need, it would take him about 30 minutes to reach me. So I need to run away for those 30 minutes. For example, if we set up a rendezvous point for dire situations or something, I just have to hide out there until Uishi-san arrives.
よし。少し見えてきたぞ。
I was still being chased around in the dark by boogeymen, but now I knew which way to go. I would never have imagined this would be so reassuring. Oh yeah, it would probably be best if I had a concealed weapon for when things got rough. Typically, that would call for a switchblade, but that wasn't too reassuring for combat. Also, since it was recognized as a weapon by the public, that also wasn't good. Really, when the time comes, a long weapon like a bat would work in my favor. I remember there was a metal bat at school. I could be confident with that when push came to shove. If I pretended I was practicing my swing, then it wouldn't be suspicious for me to always carry it around. I could go to school early tomorrow and secure it. Just possessing a weapon may be enough to deter them. Also, one more thing. Insurance. It could be something like a note or memo. I could write down everything that's happened as a sort of journal. In case I suddenly vanished, the journal would be left behind. With my journal in his possession, Uishi-san should be able to avenge my death. I left my parents engrossed in their conversation about work and went back to my room. I'm still waiting for the day that someone, pops in through the window. Or at least is just staring at him through the window, and then he, gets jump scared when he wakes up in the middle of the night. I tore out a piece of paper from a notebook and made my way to my desk. Last time I wrote a journal was for summer homework in elementary school. In the off chance something bad happened, the police could use my diary as a lead. But you said you ripped a page out of your notebook. What diary do you have? So I should only write down the facts. How should I start? I jotted down my thoughts as they came. I, Keiichi Maebara, am in fear for my life. It made me laugh nervously. It was a line that showed up often in detective stories. I never even dreamed that I would be in the type of situation where I'd write it myself. I do not know why they are after my life. Rena and the others were suspicious, but I had no proof. And that's why I couldn't write anything more. I laughed wryly at myself for writing such a passage draped in mystery. Well, you can still write it. This is your journal, man. This is not going to be used in a court of law. Would the police be able to get the hint from reading this enigmatic passage? I could only pray that they would. What I prayed for the most, though, was that this journal never needed to play its part. Here, I laughed nervously. It was too simple, so I wrote down one more line I just thought of. Actually, wait, yeah, I wanted to see if there's a way for the... Only for Nintendo Switch sprites? Is this game on the Nintendo Switch? I wanted to see if there's a way to hide the... What is it? Stop the scent... In Japan only, but yeah, okay. To not have the words be censored, because I remember that happened yesterday. Settings, okay. Where's it at, then? Language? English? Hide user interface. No, I don't want the user interface. I guess the censor... Yeah, I guess so. But did you have censoring when you did this, Diana? It was too simple, so I wrote it down. I wrote down one more line I just thought of. The only thing I do know is that it has to do with Oyashiro-sama's curse. Hello, Ruben. Was that too much? I first read this in July, so I don't remember. Okay. Probably shouldn't write more than that. If I wrote any more, then it would seem like I was just delusional. In order to appear to the reader that the person who had written this was of sound mind, I chose not to write anything else at that point. I guess they could think he was crazy, but I mean, if he disappears, I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter. If you have suspicious of someone, you should write it down. I just needed to add more as I learned more about the truth. Like, people are not seeing this if you're, like, present and going about daily life. If you go missing, that's when they're gonna go get, like, search your house and find it. Hopefully find it. I just needed to add more as I learned more about the truth. I folded the paper and thought about a place to hide it. By hiding it somewhere obvious, there was a chance that they would uncover it instead. On the other hand, if it was too obscure of a location, then it was at the risk of nobody finding it at all. In the end, I decided to take the clock off my wall and stick my folded note on the back of it with scotch tape. Wait, he has a phone in his room. So why did he have to take a phone upstairs then? Why do you even need to pick up the phone downstairs if he has a phone upstairs in his room? After that, I put the clock back into its normal position. Yeah. Didn't even look like anything was hidden behind it. Now I needed to set up such that if anything happens to me, my parents could find it. I looked at it from countless different angles until I was satisfied and made my way downstairs. My parents were still talking about work. It didn't look like it was going to end anytime soon, so I cut in.
話中ごめん。ちょっと聞いてもらっていいかな。
I never started off a conversation like that before, so his parents were both startled. They stopped talking and turned
どうし
towards
たの
me.
ケイチ。
お願いがあるんだけど、聞いてほしいんだ。もしもだよ。
圭一、急ぎの話じゃなきゃ後にしなさい。お父さんとお母さんはちょっと今、急ぎの話をしてるんだ。
I didn't think their talk was more urgent than mine. In any case, I stated my
も
request.
しもだよ。俺が死んだらさ、
Both of my parents' eyes went as wide as
死んだら
saucers.
さ、俺の部屋にある時計、あれを棺に入れてほしいんだ。
If they did that, then they'd probably find it. My memoir. Both my parents remained wide-eyed, not moving an inch. I couldn't blame
あ
them.
の時計、工作の授業で作ったお気に入りなんだ。頼むよ。
どうしたのケイチ。何かあったの
Mom was finally able to ask me with a questioning gaze. Of course, this was a normal response when someone's son suddenly talked about a subject like this. I felt bad about making them worry, but right now I just wanted them to think about the clock in my room. With the awkward mood, leaving the room in silence, I decided to go back up to my room.
俺さ、明日は早くに学校に行きたいから、もう寝るよ。おやすみ。
Saying only that, I left the living room. I need to get to school early tomorrow and secure that bat. I should make today the last day I went to school with Rena. As I climbed the stairs, I heard my mom call my name, but I pretended to not hear her. It wasn't something I could talk about with my parents. If I talked about it, it would only make things more dangerous. The fight that had begun was mine and mine alone. I couldn't rely on anybody. I wouldn't be killed, not when I still knew nothing. Okay. So Keiichi strengthens his resolve. How are you doing, Ruben? I did not ask. Pursue the truth behind the crimes. Chasing shadows. Achievement unlocked. Keiichi, sit down. I think...
最近、ケイチくんの元気がないね。機嫌が悪いのかな
Oh, wait, we're getting there. Okay. Okay, we're gonna see how they... Okay, I was not expecting that to see them, like, talking about this. Yeah, I think that the parents, are just worried about him. Like, I think they would not want to say anything that, like, got... Like, if it seemed like he just didn't want to talk with them, I don't think, it would press him, I feel. Like, they obviously tried to press him a bit, but they didn't want to trigger him too much. Glad Terry doing well.
さーて、どうしたんだろうね。恋の病にでもかかってるんじゃないの？
みーちゃん、それ飛躍しすぎ。
I'm glad Terry doing well, Ruben. Yuck, 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 yuck.
どう思う？
さあね。ケイちゃんひょっとして、かな？
わかんない。
あの日、ケイちゃんと車で話してたの。中年のでっぷりした男だったんでしょ？
うん。間違いない。
大石のやつ、ケイちゃんに何を吹き込んでるのかな？
真剣そうだったよ。ケイチくんは顔面蒼白だった。
あのね、レナはよく知らないだろうけど、実はあいつ、お社様の使いなんだよ。
何の話？
あいつが現れるとね、必ず鬼隠しが起こるの。本当だよ。
あれ？そうなの？
おととし、リカちゃんのお母さんが受水したでしょ？その直前に大石が尋問してたんだよ。
そういえば、サトシくんが転校する前にもいたね。
転校？レナはいいやつだよな。
で、今度はケイチくんの前に現れたんだ。じゃあ、ケイチくんも鬼隠しになっちゃう？
An empty silence hung in the air. Then it was suddenly interrupted by loud laughter. We get nothing after that? This... Like, the tips are completely optional? That feels like pretty big... Like, this was a very short tip, but that feels like very, very important. Why do you think that... Well, from what I understand, it's just information about... or information about, I guess, the overall story that are not from Keiichi's perspective. That is what I'm guessing. Or that's how I've always seen the tips as. I don't know why they're called tips, but... Yeah. What do I think the significance of that specific tip is? Significance of that specific tip. I think it shows that, well, they are definitely worrying about him, right? That he is not trying to... You know more than Keiichi due to tips. That is true, yeah. I think it shows that they are not trying to kill him. I think it shows that they are kind of they all know about the curse, right? About Oyashiro-sama's curse, but that very end where they laughed it off, I don't think they actually believe in it then. Because they were just like, oh, he's actually Oyashiro-sama's messenger. And then they were like, so Keiichi's gonna leave? Or like get demoned away as well? And then they started laughing. But then they also says, Mion specifically said there, right? That Satoshi does not... Sorry. Rena said that Satoshi got demoned away. But then Mion said, oh, that's not what happened. But she didn't clarify what actually did happen. Yeah. Interesting. That was very interesting. Okay. Let's continue. This was the first time I'd ever woken up with such clarity. You know, yeah. Yeah, that was really good with the laugh there. I agree. I completely agree with you there, Surplus. This was the first time I'd ever woken with such clarity. It was 5:59, just moments before my alarm would go off. I was amazed at the precision of my internal clock. I had made preparations for the next day of school before I went to bed. I changed quickly and descended to the deserted lower floor. It appeared that my mom was still asleep. Neither breakfast nor lunch was ready. Yesterday I just unilaterally declared that I would be leaving early today, so it couldn't be helped. I slathered jam on some bread and topped it with some instant cocoa. Just as I was finishing up breakfast, Mom rose groggily from her
あら、
slumber.
ケイチ。今日は早いのね。学校の行事か何か？
別に。
Answering bluntly, I picked up my bag and stood after stuffing 2 slices of bread down my throat.
もう行くの？お弁当は？もうちょっと待ってくれないとできないわよ。
I don't know why I just thought I didn't have to say anything there. I waited for her to make my lunch. Then it would end up being... If I waited for her to make my lunch, it would end up being the same time as usual. If I did that, it would raise the chances of me running into Rena and Mion on the way. Yes, from today onwards, I was going to school alone.
じゃあお昼はどうするの？
抜け出して商店で菓子パンでも買うよ。
そう。じゃあこれ、お昼代ね。ちゃんとレシート持ってくるのよ。
Bread is good. I took the 1,000 yen bill from Mom and slipped into my
こんな
pocket.
に早いけど、レナちゃんたちもこんなに早いの？
いや、俺だけ。
レナちゃんには早く出るって伝えてあるの？
I have no reason to tell her every little detail. Now do I? Finding it difficult answering this onslaught of questions, I made an annoyed
レ
face.
ナが来たら、ケイイチは先に行ったって伝えてよ。
ちょっとケイチ、待ちなさい。
It's not that I didn't trust my parents. I just couldn't rely on them. They couldn't help me. I could only hope they didn't get involved. It was safer that way. My mom's annoying voice was cut off by the slam of the door. For the first time since I moved here, I headed down the road to school alone. I think it just happened, like... You know, I think... His mom, like, if it probably happened for, like, a day or two more, there would definitely be some questions being asked, but... It's still, like, this is really technically the only second weird thing that he did. Up until now, I had always walked down the same path at the same time each day. I always met with the same people at the same places, but today was different. I didn't meet the same people I would normally, and nobody was at the places where I would have normally met them. Of course, Rena wasn't in the spot where we usually meet, and there wasn't anyone at the spot where we would have met up with Mion. The length of the trees' shadows, the morning air, and the brightness of the sun. It was a completely different type of morning from what I was used to. Without a doubt, it felt strange. It left me with the impression that I had destroyed the illusion Hinamizawa had set up before me before it had enough time to prepare all the props needed to deceive me.
あら、ケイチくん。今朝は早いわね。みんなで早朝から待ち合わせ？
The person who called out to me was someone we always passed by as they were taking a walk along the edge of the fields. The name was, I forgot. Of course, it wasn't the spot where we usually pass each other.
今朝は早くに目が覚めちゃったので、気分転換なんです。あまり気にしないでください。
But the thing is, if it's just suddenly happening and it's only like one or two things and then it goes back to normal, it might not be that big of a deal. But it's only like, you know, like if one thing happens or like one or two things happen that's out of the blue, usually you're just like, okay, that's a bit strange, but you don't like immediately ask a question. You're just like, okay, sure. But then if it's like it continuously happens for like a few days and like multiple times and there are multiple things, that's when you're like, okay, what's up? That's how I see it, at least. I threw out a random excuse.
レナちゃんやミオンちゃんはどうしたんだい？今日は一人なの？
ええ、まあ。
I was being asked the same type of questions my mom was asking. So I answered them in the same uninteresting, vague manner. It wasn't funny being asked where Rena was each time I passed by someone. Maybe it was to be expected. It was because for so long we were always together, so amicably. Even I felt I'd let my guard down. We could still be... Stop it, Keiichi. Don't think about that anymore. You spent all day yesterday thinking about how dangerous it was to go soft, didn't you? Beep, beep, beep. A car horn blared out from nowhere. Even though I was walking, lost in thought, that horn was way too close. Yeah, I guess you're right. No, you're definitely like I think the randomly dying thing that would be a very strange thing. I do agree with you there. Maybe like I guess I'm not thinking about that. It's not like it's just something like a behavior out of the ordinary. It's like the dude just like your son brought up that, yo, if I die, then bury me with this thing. Like that is a bit strange. Mechanical behemoth barreled at me from behind, catching me completely off guard. By the time I turned around, the van's hulking chassis was almost on top of me. I'd seen plenty of cars veer to the opposite shoulder to avoid pedestrians, but this car was doing the opposite. It felt like there was somebody on the opposite shoulder and the van was swerving in my direction to avoid them. That blissfully ignorant train of thought delayed me from realizing something much, much more important. That large mass was hurtling right at me. Was it gonna hit me? The inside of my head instantly flooded with a painfully cold liquid. In that moment, the scene before me, no, time itself, had frozen. In the silence of that frozen moment, I compared the van so close that I had no way to dodge it, and my body, the upper half, twisted awkwardly in order to look behind me. There was no way I could dive out of the way in my current position. If I lost focus now, this moment would unpause, and I would probably be plowed over, caught in this silly pose. Bend my upper body over towards the paddy by the side of the road. If I bent far enough, I'd get away with just being hit by the side view mirror. As soon as the thought crossed my mind, the temporal stasis was shattered by the deafening sound of the van. The side mirror struck my shoulder, sending me spinning off through the air like a top, locked in my contorted position. A splash. Sent tumbling through the air, I crashed into the muddy paddy by the side of the road. My entire body was soiled and drenched, but the choice I had made in that instant was unmistakably for the best. I was covered in mud, but where the alternative was being hit by the car, it was the closest I could be to being unscathed. Rising out from the paddy, I had enough in me to glare over at the stopped van and yell profanities at the driver. I'm not sure if he was able to see me, but the van sped off suddenly.
待てよ、クソ！これって、ひき逃げって言うんじゃねえのかよ！
I couldn't help but continue yelling out profanities. The disgrace from being covered in mud hurt me more than any physical wounds. I slogged through the muddy paddy and made my way back onto the road.
これって犯罪じゃねえのかよ！畜生！
Shit! I'll track down and sue you. If I go looking for a van, I'm sure to find it in this little village. The path I was on had rice paddies on either side, and it had become so narrow that one car could barely fit through. It wasn't a place you could tear full speed down in a car, let alone pass by pedestrians. Not only was it a narrow road, but the car was just now closer to my side of the road than the other when it went past me. Even as I cursed, I was desperately trying to suppress the dark cloud roiling up within me. This wasn't just a hit and run. That car just now was trying to run me over, wasn't it? Thinking back, I did feel like there had been a car creeping up on me slowly for a while. That's right. As soon as I'd parted ways with that person taking a walk, I had that feeling the whole time. If it had wanted to pass me, then it had no shortage of chances. Normally, I would have felt suspicious and turned around sooner, but I was lost in thought. Oh yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. Oh, I didn't mean to take a screenshot. Usota. There you go, I'm cat now. I will be cat for a bit. Because Bonnie Ronnie is a cat that he put yesterday. And I'm kicking myself for not realizing it was there sooner. Yeah, I am being stared menacingly at by Surplus and just had lies yelled in my face. And then, when the path became narrow and there was no one else in sight, he floored it. Yet, if I had hesitated for even a moment, the result would have been no laughing matter. As the adrenaline rush from nearly being run over subsided, and the realization of how terrifying the preceding events were sunk in. There's no doubt about it, the van was intentionally trying to hit me. A cold, viscous sweat seeped from my scalp and slid down my back before dribbling off. I struggled to avoid falling into a panic. There was still the possibility that this was really just an accident. Calm down, Keiichi. But also don't be naive, Keiichi. Being that lax will get you killed next time. You need to always be on your toes. Don't give them any openings. If my enemy was really out to kill me, the next time they would just use a more reliable method. If that time came, and I was acting like now, getting covered in mud was the price I'd paid for my own naivety. Covered in mud, but without injury. Not even a sprain. I guess this is what you would call the silver lining. I began walking again, this time cautiously. I wouldn't even show a hint of carelessness. He is going through it, yeah, he's like... I don't even know. He's so paranoid now, which makes sense. But, yeah. He's just very paranoid. I suspected only Rena and the others up until now. No, it was because I'd suspected them that I had believed there was no other enemies. Uishi-san had said so, didn't he? There was just a possibility of a village conspiracy. Was I really mired so deeply in this situation that I had no choice but to try and carry on as usual? Wouldn't it be safe just to hole up in my house? But the moment I abandoned my regular routine, everyone around me would abandon theirs as well. That was just too horrifying of a thought. I recalled the tales Uishi-san told me of when Hinamizawa was still called Onikakushi. A frightening tale of an entire village of demons hurting their prey, or hunting their prey, surrounding them and eating them alive. One must not interfere with the demons. One must pretend not to see it. The enemies were numerous, the whole village. The villagers, with their unwavering faith in the curse, would do nothing to help me. The strong, sudden flash of sunshine made me slightly dizzy. I had no idea what was going on anymore. When I suspected it was the work of man, I would catch a glimpse of Oyashiro-sama's curse. Did he? Did I say that? It made me slightly dizzy. Yeah, Keiichi's not, like, slightly diddy. It's, he assaults women. And when I suspected it was Oyashiro-sama's curse, someone would poke their head out. I lost it. What was coincidence? What was intentional? Who was my enemy? Who was just a bystander? No, what I really, truly wanted to know was, how did I end up with the proverbial bullseye painted on my back? Eventually, an answer in a form I could understand will appear. I don't care when that'll happen, because until then, I cannot die. That alone fueled my resolve to fight and will keep me alive. Did you fart, Diana? Is that what that was? I remember seeing the metal bat in the gym storage shed, but there was a padlock on the door barring my entry. Yes, okay. At the very least, I wanted to get my hands on it before everyone else arrived at school. I circled around the school grounds impatiently. But all I could find were things like pieces of lumber. Nothing that I could bring back into the classroom easily. Then I had an epiphany. I should search inside the classroom. If it was something in the classroom to begin with, then there wouldn't be a problem. I could tell that everyone's indoor shoes were still inside their lockers. Good thing I came early. Nobody was here yet. I wondered, what could I find in the classroom? I didn't think I could find an especially effective weapon like a bat, but it couldn't be helped at this point. Until the gym storage said it was open, I needed to find a substitute. A lingering hint of naivety whispered that there was no way I'd be attacked at school. But such soft ideas would no longer protect me. To think that they were slowly making their way into parts of my life that I had once thought impenetrable. In the worst case, my own house might not be safe anymore. That was an incredibly frightening thought. But I believe that not considering the worst case scenario would have been even more frightening. Anyway, I will survive. As long as I lived, then I definitely will be able to escape this labyrinth of nonsense. I see what you mean, Surplus. Anytime the mouth opens with the gulp is funny. Definitely. My exploration of the classroom came to an impasse. That much was to be expected. There was no way there would be anything that could be a weapon in the classroom. In case of emergency, there was probably nothing I could do but swing my own chair around. My gaze landed on the lockers that had come to be used for personal storage. The locker that Mion used to store her pile of games was among them. There was one for each person in the class, all lined up. Of course, there's one for me as well. But yeah, there was supposed to still be a tracksuit in my locker. Seeing me covered in mud would be strange, so I should go change later. But first, I needed a weapon. If one of my classmates came, it would be hard to rummage through all the lockers. I swiftly began opening the lockers one by one. They were mostly just filled with things like gym clothes, personal items, and umbrellas. An umbrella. If I couldn't find anything better, then this would have to be my weapon. Excuse me. I was just about to give up on finding anything decent when I opened a locker that held exactly what I wanted. It was without a doubt a metal bat. It was well worn and pretty beaten up, but there was no doubt it. It was usable. In that locker that reeked of mold, there also hung a baseball uniform. It was probably the locker of a student in a Pee-wee league or something like that. If that was the case, then he'd probably ask for it back. At that time, I could hear the voices of the children scuffling their way noisily in from the hallway. Amongst them, I could make out Rika-chan and Satoko.
おはようございますです。あらあらあら、今朝はお早いですわね、ケイチさん。
I nonchalantly hid the bat I was holding behind me.
なんなんですの、その身なりは。泥だらけでしたよ。
ああ、まあちょっとあってな。すぐ着替えるから勘弁しろ。
With that said, I began taking off my clothes. Satoko began to blush just as I expected her to.
レディーの前でお着替えなんてしつけがなってませんことよ。
着替えをじーっと見てるレディーもしつけがなってないと思うぞ。男子は更衣室がないんだから諦めろ。
Satoko feigned disgust. She went into the hall, still blushing. Conversely, Rika-chan continued to stare at me, preparing to change.
リカちゃんもレディーなら着替えを見てるのは良くないと思うぞ。
僕はレディーじゃないですからいいのです。
What? Okay, Rika. She deliberately pouted and looked at me with upturned eyes.
じゃあリカちゃんも今からレディーだ。
レディーなら仕方ありませんです。
Rika-chan, appearing to be satisfied with being considered a lady, made her way to join Satoko in the hallway. It is. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, Rika-chan stopped suddenly and turned back towards me.
ケイチは野球を始めますですか？
That's funny. That's actually funny. It seemed that Rika-chan had noticed the bat.
ああ、ちょっとさ、体がなまってさ、ちょっと素振りでも始めようかなってな。
健康に気を使うのはとても良いことだと思いますです。
She was talking like an old lady despite her appearance. After saying that, Rika-chan started to leave again, but stopped and looked back at me once
その
more.
バットなくさないでくださいねです。
No, he's not. He's just, it's just... Like, yeah, he's just dead, basically. Like, his... Not, I mean, actually, but, like, his voice is dead. He's just completely drained, is basically it. It seems she already knew I took it out of someone's locker. What is that? Please don't lose that bat. There was no name on the locker door. I didn't know whose bat it was, but I would be borrowing it until they complained. It wouldn't be for long, just until the gym storage shed was opened. After quickly changing into the tracksuit, I checked the time. I still had plenty of time before class began, because I came so early. It is very sad. I would say it's sad. It's not almost sad. I took the bat in one hand and went out the schoolyard. That was, of course, to practice my swing. I need to make it known that I would always have a bat on me so I could practice my swing. At some point, the sunlight had become even stronger. Disregarding my classmates as they made their way to school, I took my position in the shadow of the school building. I wasn't the academic type, and I wasn't much of an athlete either. I might get muscle pain if I just suddenly started swinging. I should at least start out with some warm-ups. I doubt anyone would think I was doing something out of the ordinary, which was the exact opposite of my actual mental state. I gripped the bat and swung lightly. The bat was by no means light. The weight would make it a reliable weapon when I needed it to be. Of course, I could only pray that the moment I needed to use this weapon would never come. Just carrying it around could deter attacks against me. At least that's what I hoped. A lot of inner monologue the last in this chapter.
あれケイちゃんあんた何やってんの
Being bombarded with such a hysterical voice, I jumped.
ケイチくん、野球部だよ。野球部だよ。
It was Rena and Mion.
先に行ったって言われて驚いたけど、ケイちゃん、あんた何やってるわけ？
見てわからないかよ。素振りだよ。甲子園だよ。別にダイエットでもいいぞ。
ダイエットってケイちゃん、そんなに太ってたっけ？
ああ、知らなかったろ。実は三段腹なんだ。もちもちでタプタプなんだぞ。
もちもちでタプタプ。
The championship. Like, it's... Yeah, he's talking like he's really a part of the team, huh?
レナ、変な想像しなくていいぞ。
To disrupt Rena from imagining something that vulgar, I ruffled her hair messily.
じゃあまあ、頑張って県大会を目指してちょうだいよ。
So vague to the championship. Yeah, the Hinamizawa baseball championship. They definitely have more than one baseball team here.
おじさん応援してるわ。野球部の強い高校、教えよっか。そこにいる左腕の亀田くんがすごいピッチャーなんだけど。
Okay, well, it seems like you're a professional.
頑張ってね。
Seems like they've already taken me for a baseball nut, but oh well. Well, if I really did make it to the championship, it would be a cinch. After all, I'd be the pitcher and catcher. I'd pitch the ball, then run past the ball just as I threw it and change over to being the catcher in a burst of speed in a super incredible explosive speed. I laughed dryly at the ludicrous image. Coming back to my senses, I smashed the bat against the ground.
何笑ってんだよ、俺。
Pounded the ground over and over. With each impact, the reverberation traveling through the bat stung my hands. They smile at me like that. I'll... Don't allow anyone close to me. Don't trust anyone, no matter how many times I tell myself that. They make me smile like that. I already knew quite well that there were demons dwelling in my smiling friends. But I just couldn't believe it. That kind of split personality really exists? Like how Rena confessed to the doctor, were they simply being possessed by Oyashiro-sama? In other words, did a supernatural being like Oyashiro-sama really exist? Was it possessing everyone trying to kill me? Yeah, that would be wonderful. If only everyone were actually my friends all along and everything was just Oyashiro-sama's fault.
前原圭一のバカ野郎だから
I yelled out, drawing out all the power from the pit of my stomach, and raised the bat violently into the air.
甘えるんじゃね
As I screamed out with all my might, I beat the metal bat into the ground over and over. With every impact, my weakness was being beaten down. Smash. Forget. Smash. Don't be soft. Smash. Know your enemy. Smash. Like hell I'd let them kill me. My shoulders heaving up and down from my ragged breathing, I heard the first bell ring just as I'd calmed down. Smiling friends! I know that reference. I gasped with the sudden realization. That was the final bell. As I felt all the tension drain from me, I let out a deep breath. My mind was in a muddled state for much of the entire day. I didn't feel like I was awake, but I didn't feel like I was asleep either. I couldn't say it felt especially comfortable, but I felt a kind of release that the sanctity of the school, part of my daily life, had yet to be violated. How long would I have to keep on living like this? I could only grit my teeth and bear with it, as the living hell slowly gnawed away at me.
ケイチくん、やろうやろう。部活の時間なんだよ。だよ。
The sound of Rena's voice brought me back to my senses.
ほらほら、ケイちゃん、ぼーっとしない。机を寄せて寄せて。
Everyone was moving their desks together as usual. That's right. It was happy fun club time. That would have counted as Keiji's typical masculinity talk. Where exactly? Like this? I could only grit my teeth and bear with it as living hell slowly gnawed away with me? At me? But I had no intention of taking part. I haphazardly stuffed the contents of my desk into my bag as I prepared to go home. It was a weak-handed gesture to avoid having to actually say I'll be going home now.
なんだよ、ケイちゃん。今日も直帰なわけ？
Mion sounded quite disappointed.
気分が乗らないんだ。しばらくほっといてくんないかな。
When he was telling us, oh, I guess so, yeah. The tone of that words that spilled from my mouth matched Mion's disapproving glare. It felt like the air in the room had dried out. Satoko looked like she was about to say something, but perhaps, dissuaded by the mood, she swallowed her words and stayed silent. Nobody said a thing. I took that to mean I could leave if I wanted. But the collective gaze of the four of them, like the tiny pins used to mount an insect in a display, held me in place. Rena was the one who cut through the heavy mood.
ケイチくん、やっぱり女の子と一緒に遊ぶのなんか嫌だったかな？かな？
She said it in such a melancholic tone that it sent a wave of pain racing through my heart. If this pain was going to kill me, I wanted to be in the soft part of me that could still feel pain. I tore at my chest violently, tearing out the pins that held me in place.
そういうわけじゃねえよ。
I'd only be hurting myself saying anything more, so I swallowed my words. Cutting things off there, I turned and exited the classroom. They didn't speak a word to me as I left. It was a long, dull trip back home, but I didn't lose focus. I firmly squeezed the grip of the bat, which was already soggy from sweat. Realizing that, I wiped down with my sleeve. If something were to happen, I wouldn't want it to be slippery. Since this morning, I'd become especially sensitive to the presence of cars. Even while walking, my ears pricked up and sought out threatening sounds and presences that could be closing in. That was why I could hear it. Without a doubt, they were footsteps. Those footsteps had matched perfectly up with mine for a while now. From what I could sense, it was just one person. But I had no intention of being careless. Did they intend to follow me like that car this morning until we were in a good location to assault me? Then it wasn't a good idea to keep walking like this. I stopped walking and looked back. The wooded path, crowded with trees, responded with silence, as if there was nobody there to begin with. But I wouldn't be fooled. I was certain footsteps were following me. And just as I stopped, the footsteps stopped as well. Meaning the person following me wanted to keep their distance. That was, without question, proof that I was their target. I held my breath, waiting for that presence to panic, and started moving again. The trees rustled with the sounds of the wind. The Higurashi also joined in the dissonant chorus, trying to throw my focus into disarray. This does feel very sad. Had 5 minutes passed? Or had I been like this for the whole 30 minutes? It was so hard to breathe that I might have suffocated. It seemed I would be the first one to panic. Without a doubt, he was lurking in the shade of that tree with bated breath. Then, I'd make the first move. I fixed my grip on the bat. I raised it up to my shoulder to be ready to swing it at any time.
おい、いるんだろそこに。
With all of my might, I screamed at whoever was hiding in the shade of trees. But the presence of the shade didn't budge. Until the moment I found them, they had no intention of revealing
分
themselves.
かってんだよ。そこにいるのはよ。
I screamed out angrily at them again, but even still, they didn't move at all. Then I'll just go over there myself. With all due vigilance, I approached, step by step. Stepping into the tree's shadow, I saw a human figure there. That figure was curled up like a small animal.
レナ、
When she realized I'd found her, her expression softened. She seemed apologetic, but wasn't going to speak a
なん
word.
か俺に用かよ。
I wouldn't accept that silence and screamed the question at her.
別に、
Rena was in panic, with tears welling up in her eyes. But it was obvious that she'd been following me.
部活はどうしたんだよ。
ケイイチくんがお休みしたから、レナもお休み。
関係ないだろ。俺なんか気にしないで遊んでろよ。
だって、ケイイチくんのこと心配で。
Thinking about how I'd been acting up until now, it wasn't hard to imagine that my behavior could have been perceived as strange. Serena was concerned. At a quick glance, that's how it would seem. But I wasn't going to let my guard down that easily. Even if that was really the case, she still wouldn't have something to do like try to tail me. She should have called out to me when I was leaving and gone out right with me. But Rena didn't do that. She kept her distance from me and matched my walking speed. On top of that, she matched the sound of her footsteps and deviously tried to hide her presence from me. Then after she realized I noticed she was there, she held her breath as she tried hiding from me. She wore a timid expression that would force one to take pity on her, but without a doubt, she was tailing me.
もうついてくんなよ。
Still glaring at Rena, I continued walking onwards. After I'd walked for a bit, she ignored my command and began walking again, so I yelled at her once more.
ついてくるなって言ってるだろ。
だって、レナの家も同じ方向だし。
じゃあレナが先を歩けよ。レナが見えなくなったら俺も歩く。
I moved out of the way and waved my bat violently to urge her forward.
レナは、ケイイチくんと一緒に帰りたいな。
Making a pitiful expression, she meekly squeaked out the words in a voice that she knew would cut into my heart. That agitated me to no end. I knew it was a lie. If you wanted to go home together, then you should have called out to me. Now you're just trying to blurt out random lies.
ごめんなさい。
It seemed that the seething anger within me was written all over my face. Even without me saying anything, Rena had understood what I was feeling inside.
分かったならほら、行けよ。
I swung the bat, urging her again to walk. Rena looked back and forth between me and the bat and started walking hesitantly. Then stopped again.
早く行けよ、早く。
行くから。そのバットやめてよ。怖いの。
Rena guarded herself while pointing at me, holding the bat. She may have realized that I wasn't planning on using this bat for baseball. I lowered the bat, but still guardedly opened the way for
行
her.
けよ。これなら文句ないだろ。
There was nothing else she could protest. She passed by me timidly, so as not to set me off. As I watched her pass by, she stopped completely after having barely moved at all.
おい、立ち止まるなよ。
Then a powerful gust blew past us, barraging my face with dust. The dust got into my eyes and clouded my vision. While rubbing my eyes With my left hand, I swung blindly with the bat in my right, protecting the small opening I had presented. But Rena didn't even try to attack during that opening. Attack me? No, she hadn't budged an inch. I could tell from the sound her fluttering skirt in the wind. As her skirt settled, so did the silence. At that moment, the voice inside of me immediately warned me of impending danger. I was caught by surprise. The smell of the air had changed. Without me realizing it, the air around me suddenly felt like a calamity was about to befall me. Like the air had suddenly become invisible concrete. Like Rena and I were locked in this space. Rena didn't move an inch. Also unable to move, I stared at her back. Rena was the first to break the silence. Instantly, she altered her stance. I felt like I had just witnessed her shift from Rena into that other person who looked like Rena. But the voice was one I knew well, which filled me with a kind of bewildering pity. Carelessly, I felt relief upon hearing that pitiful voice.
ごめんね。聞いてもいい？
Too shy to even turn around, Rena squeezed her voice out desperately, as she trembled.
なんだよ。
どうしてバットなんか持ってるのかな？
The question Rena asked was by no means unexpected.
俺が何を持ってたっていいだろ。
でも、昨日まで持ってなかったし。どうして突然？
別に突然でもいいだろ。俺がバットを持ってるとおかしいかよ。
だって圭一くん、野球とかしない人だったでしょ？おかしいよ。
I couldn't tell what kind of answer she was looking for, and I was getting tired of answering her.
突然、野球がしたくなったんだよ。それじゃおかしいか？
おかしいよ。
She answered instantly, and that annoyed me slightly.
突然野球がしたくなった。素振りがしたくなったから、バットを持ち歩いてる。それのどこが変なんだよ。
変。おかしい。絶対。なんで圭一くんまで。
ぶつくさとうるせえやつだな。俺がスポーツに目覚めるのが、そんなに変かよ。
I tried to sound a bit more threatening to end the conversation. Until my suspicions about Rena were cleared, I had no obligation to answer her questions.
ごめんね。そんなに怒らないで。
Rena still didn't turn around and spat out words of apology one after the next.
最後に一個だけ教えて。
これ以上話す気も教える気もねえよ。早く行けよ。
I yelled loudly at her, causing her to flinch like she had been struck. Seeing her in such a pathetic state caused my heart to ache sorely. But even though she was afraid, she stubbornly kept herself from moving. Before I was able to threaten her again, Rena asked her final question.
なんでバットまで同じなの？
What did she mean by the bat was the same? Okay. I don't know if I said this, but I did think it. I had a feeling that bat, because that locker was not in use for a while. My thought at the time was that the locker was actually Satoshi's. That's what I thought. Because, I don't know. The main thing that gave it away was that it smelled like I can't remember what it was, but it was like fungus or something. Like, it had been put down for a while. So, I don't know if that's the case, but since apparently this is something, I don't know who exactly this is.
お前、何言ってんだ？
だから、なんでバットまで同じなのかなって。
何を言ってんだか全然わかんねえよ。もっとはっきり言え。
Even still, Rena didn't turn around. After inhaling deeply, she screamed.
だから、どうしてバットまでサトシ君と同じなの？
Okay, so it is.
サトシって、え？
Upon hearing that name out from the blue, I became dumbfounded for a brief moment. By Satoshi, did she mean the student who transferred out last year? No, that couldn't be. Rena had tried to cover it up by saying she transferred, but Uishi-san told me quite clearly that he went missing. He was the student who sat at my seat up until last year. he was believed to have been demoned away by Oyashiro-sama's curse. I didn't know the details about his disappearance. The aunt he lived with was killed the night of the Watanagashi by a drug addict, and not long after that, he suddenly vanished and was now missing. That Satoshi and I were... What? My gaze fell to the bat in my hands. Could it be? Satoshi Hojo. It was a bit difficult to see, but that's what was written on the white tape at the end of the bat. I see. So this was Satoshi's bat.
ああ、これ、サトシのバットだったんだな。誰も使ってなかったんで、ちょっと借りたんだよ。いいだろ、それくらい。
そんなことじゃないの。
The way Rena said that made it seem like this bat was something that should have never have been touched. Like it was some sort of offering at a shrine or a memento of the deceased. I could only stand there, perplexed and unable to respond. Rena continued speaking without waiting for a reply.
サトシ君の時と、どうしてそんなにまで同じなの？
Rena was talking about more than just the bat belonging to Satoshi.
サトシ君もそうだった。野球チームには入ってたけど、本当は野球なんか好きじゃない人だったのに。
それが俺とどう関係が？
サトシ君もある日突然バットを持ち歩き始めたの。チームに入ってただけでスポーツなんかしない人だったのに。
What about it? I closed my mouth before I could say that out loud. Listen careful, Keiichi. Rena's trying to tell us something important.
サトシ君もね、ある日突然一人で投稿するようになったの。ケイチ君みたいに。そしてね、ある日突然素振りの練習を始めたの。ケイチ君みたいに。そしてね、ある日突然バットを持ち歩くようになったの。ケイチ君みたいに。そしてね、ある日突然。
And one day he suddenly... What? Rena had swallowed her words. Rena's sudden silence brought a hush back to the surrounding area. It was then I could finally digest the content of the entire conversation. She was saying that my chain of actions was exactly the same as Satoshi. What was the meaning of this? Up until just now, I'd forgotten all about Satoshi. I had never paid much thought to him in the first place. Not only that, I didn't even know anything of what he'd done. My actions today should have been my own creation after all the planning I'd done, but they'd been the exact same as Satoshi's. Then Satoshi... No, more importantly... Well, Satoshi and I acted the same, then there was a really good possibility that what happened after would be the same.
レナ、ある日突然、サトシはどうしたんだよ。
Rena knew. She knew what became of Satoshi. No, forget about what happened to a guy in the past. Rena knew what was going to happen to me.
答えろよ、レナ。サトシはどうしたんだよ。
With that, I grabbed Rena's shoulder violently and forcibly turned her around to face me. As I faced her, I felt a jolt travel through my entire body.
言ったよね。ケイチ君。
It was that person I didn't know. At least it definitely wasn't the Rena Ryugu I've been talking up until now. The voice just now didn't have a trace of the trembling or emotion that it had before. The amount of regret I felt for turning her around so carelessly was unsurpassed. That gaze that pierced like a cold needle, that smile on her face that invoked an image of having been carved out by a knife. Chills went down my spine. My mind froze under a layer of rime. Both of Rena's eyes pierced through mine, leaving me unable to look away. As if to remind me of the fear from that time before, Rena brought her face close to mine, so close that I could feel her breath. Her face had filled my entire field of vision. Then, her sharply shaped lips grew even sharper, like the curve of a crescent moon. She grinned.
言ったよね、ケイチ君。
After a short pause, Rena repeated the same words, over and over again.
サトシ君はね、転校しちゃったの。
Okay. This is interesting. I really wonder what this is. I really have no clue. It's almost like something is actually possessing her. It's like when she's gonna, I don't know, transferred? Meaning what? What Rena meant must have been some new definition of transfer that I previously was not aware of. My throat and lips dried up. I couldn't even acknowledge what I just heard. All I could do was swallow down my own saliva. It would seem that Rena saw that as a nod. She pulled her gaze back and spryly stepped back 2-3 paces. As she did, my legs gave out and I fell to my knees pathetically. Rena and me on my knees underneath her emotionless smile. That had to be a very odd sight indeed. Seeing me in that pathetic state, she neither scoffed at me nor held out her hand. But I could neither stand up nor escape with her gaze shooting through my eyes. There was undoubtedly a metal bat in my hand, but right now it was useless to me. I was like a fly caught in her web. Heavy sweat beaded all over my body. I could feel it dripping from my skin.
しないよね。
But you won't?
ケイチ君は
Oh, you won't transfer. Rena finally released me from that cage of time after what felt like an eternity. But her question was missing something important and was incredibly vague. Once again, I swallowed hard, urging her on.
何をだよ。
What did she not want me to do?
転校
That's where this ends off? Surely not, right? There has to be more? No? Okay, no. Satoshi and I had... What? All my well-planned actions throughout the day turned to have been nothing more than a reenactment of what Satoshi had done? Satoshi. Had he really been in the same situation as I was now? The friends he had gotten along with had changed suddenly and for no reason, at least none that I had noticed, planned to kill him? Then, fearing for his life as I am, he got a bat to protect himself and carried it around every day to practice his swing. And then one day, suddenly, he transferred. My blood went cold, causing a prickling sensation to course through my veins. Starting near my heart, it radiated outwards, from the top of my head to the soles of my feet, chilling every part of me without recourse. What did she mean by transfer? What did she mean by transfer? Was Satoshi still at wherever he transferred to? Was he the only one who would be able to understand me? Would he be able to tell me why it all ended up like this? More importantly, where did he transfer to? What did she mean by transfer? What did she mean by transfer? Before I knew it, I was at my front door. The frigid knob was hard to turn. Was nobody home? It wasn't that odd of an occurrence. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the single key attached to my fur seal keychain. The lights are off. I stepped into the entryway. Just as I was about to take my shoes, a chill ran down my spine. Someone had entered right behind me. Like a classmate messing around, standing right up against my back. You're kidding, right? It had to be my imagination. Logically speaking, it was impossible for someone to be able to hide their presence within my personal space all the way through the door. But there was undoubtedly someone behind me. Hey now, Keiichi. How do you know they're there even though they're behind you? Because you hear the sound of flowing hair. There's no other reason I'd hear that sound. That was the presence. Because I could hear the sound of them blinking. Keiichi Maebara, there's no way you could hear that. My most base instincts were warning me of the presence. Common sense was telling me that it was just my imagination. It was just my imagination. There was nobody behind me. I began to erase the mental image of an eerie figure standing behind me. But at the same time, I asked myself, if there was nobody, then what was I feeling? As an uncomfortable sensation crawled up my spine. Actually, wouldn't it be better if there was somebody there? If there was nobody there when he turned around, would you be able to accept that? I'd be able to answer all those questions just by looking behind me. But I didn't have enough courage to even do that simple task. Alright, I could try speaking to them. The person behind me might answer me. It was a random thought. I didn't care how I went about it, so just as long as I didn't have to turn around. If I'd calmed down and thought about it, I would have known that wouldn't have solved anything.
どなたですか?
I spoke in such a hoarse, broken voice that I couldn't believe it was my own. I could almost feel them contemplating their response. I felt it. There's no way I should be able to do that. Calm down, Keiichi. It's all in your head. That time, I was certain I heard it. As if hesitantly trying to answer my inquiry, I was certain I could hear the sound of somebody inhaling. I heard it. I heard it. I heard it clearly. It was a girl. A young girl. I didn't know who it was. A tiny speck of courage in me, however reckless it was, inspired a primal yet fitting solution to the current predicament. A scream. All the force in my body released from my lungs and through my throat, ceasing all thought process in my head. Suppressing all my thoughts and emotions, I began to collapse like a house of cards, somehow managing to twist my body and look back, and as I did so, it was definitely there. Right there. Somebody was there. Until the moment I turned around, until I brought the area behind me into my field of vision, they were definitely there. Falling face up, my eyes traced the remnants of the presence suspended in the empty space. It couldn't be. They were invisible. They looked like they weren't there, but they were actually just still standing there. As I screamed, all the emotions I was holding back burst free in a violent wave. However, I was decidedly calm as my emotional dam collapsed. The turbulent wave of pent-up emotions was skillfully diverted into a torrent of aggression. That emotion was definitely required to extricate myself from the bizarre situation happening right in front of me. In my state of heightened lucidity, I entrusted my body to the fury. The mental bat held firm in my right hand, as if drawn there by a magnet. A mid-level sweep would be the hardest attack to dodge. I remember reading something like that from a book about swordsmanship, or something. I brandished my will to fight. The afterimage of that amalgamation of metal flashed as it swung from left to right, beating against the entryway. The bat slammed into the right wall, the tip rebounding violently. Very calmly, I transferred the force of the rebound into a sweep to the left. The door of the shoe cupboard was split into pieces. Those two swings whiffed through the empty space, but they seemed to have a great psychological impact on the enemy. I could feel the panic emanating from that space. The attack wasn't the only thing required. I extracted the bat from the cupboard. It was embedded in, and I screamed as I spun my entire body around in a large arc. I just had a thought. What if Satoshi killed his mom? Or his aunt, or whoever was taking care of him? Just a thought. My scream shook the air, imbuing my ferocious swings with even more destructive power. Crack. Without mercy or restraint, my violent strike, with certainly fatal force behind it, shattered the top of the cupboard. None of my attacks struck the enemy, but my ferocity had certainly seemed to impact them. Breathing heavily, my entire body soaked in sweat, the invisible enemy, there but not there, dispersed. When I was certain that the enemy had retreated, I locked the front door and latched the chain. No way had it feigned retreat and was now inside my house. Once again, I channeled my aggression and searched the house for the presence, but it was gone. I had succeeded in fending it off. At that moment, the tension drained from my body, and I let out a deep sigh of relief. All of the emotions I'd been holding back chaotically merged together and began to flood out. A hodgepodge of fear, accomplishment, and disbelief all mixed together and began to flow through my body. Unable to deal with each individual feeling, I beat them all back with the strongest exhaustion. Even in this moment, I remained composed. After checking that all the doors throughout the house were locked, I went up to my room on the second floor and closed the curtains. I straightened my back and tilted my head back a little. After clearing my mind of all my idle thoughts, I managed to calm down even more. What was that at the front door? There was definitely something there. Thinking about it, maybe it was just an apparition I dreamt up in my confused state, but I really didn't think that was the case. Calm down, Keiichi Maibara. Compose yourself. No matter how calmly I thought about it, what just happened wasn't a figment of my imagination. It was obviously a supernatural phenomenon, and without a doubt, something behind me. It wasn't some sort of illusion I saw amidst my confusion and disorientation. Proof? I had just one piece. When I asked, "Who is it?" they inhaled as if they were about to answer. That sound had clearly reached my ears. The situation I was in right now was still unclear. Either I'd been possessed by the supernatural phenomenon known as Oyashiro-sama's curse, or this was a ruse by the villagers who believed in it and were imitating it. Either way, their motives were unclear. The roundabout way it had been done was also still a mystery. If it was perpetrated by humans, that would mean admitting that it was Rena and the rest of them doing it, but it would be solvable. Oishi-san and the rest of the police would surely arrest my enemy, but if it was a manifestation of Oyashiro-sama's curse, I wondered what would happen. Uishi-san very clearly decided that curses don't exist. At that time, those words were pretty dependable, but as things were now, with the rising possibility that the perpetrators were not human, he suddenly seemed quite unreliable. If I told Uishi-san this was the work of Oyashiro-sama's curse, what would happen? I couldn't imagine his reaction, but it would go without question that a void would expand rapidly between myself and Uishi-san. With me having so few allies to begin with, and not being able to confidently declare whether or not this was a curse, there was no merit to doing that. I better keep the facts of what just happened at the doorway to myself. It would be better if I didn't add what happened here to the memo behind the clock. There was still the ever so slight possibility that I was actually confused when I thought I was composed, and I was going berserk in the entryway. How wonderful that would be if that really was what happened. I would be able to refute Oyashiro-sama's curse. But if I denied Oyashiro-sama's curse, then that would mean admitting that Rena and the rest were the perpetrators. If I said that Rena and the rest weren't the perpetrators, then that would mean that believing in Oyashiro-sama's curse. But by denying both of those, I would be admitting that I, myself, was losing it. The three options from which I couldn't choose became a trilemma of sorts. They mixed together and formed a whirlpool in my mind, making my head spin. Once again, I straightened myself and leaned my head back to slightly cool myself down. Calm down, Keiichi. Accept what has actually happened as reality. Stop thinking of anything more than that. But I couldn't help but think of it. How wonderful it would be if it turned out I was delirious and everything up until now was a figment of my imagination. Oyashiro-sama's curse wouldn't exist and I would still be bestest buddies with Rena and the rest. I would have to be crazy. That was the first time in my life I'd ever wished for such a thing. The phone rang noisily downstairs. I still don't know why this phone doesn't ring in his room. Like, I'm pretty sure it should be connected to the same line. Generally, there were no calls for me, so I never really answered the phone much. But since my parents weren't there, I had no choice. I squirmed off the bed and went downstairs.
もしもし、前原です。
ケイチ、お母さんだけど。
I intuitively had a bad feeling about this. It was because I thought she was going to ask me to... go out and buy some things. So I took the initiative.
何？別に俺、夕食はインスタントでもいいよ。まだいっぱいあったでしょ。
The other day we went out as a family and bought a whole case of cup noodles. I wanted to get a bunch of different kinds actually, but they refused since the individual packs were expensive, so instead, I got a whole case of the mega-sized pork and bone and ginger-flavored ones I liked. But my parents didn't like strong flavors and didn't touch any of them, so the cupboards were still full of them.
だからさ、買い物に行く必要はないんじゃないの？
ケイチ、買い物のお願いじゃないの。お父さんとお母さんね、お仕事の関係で急遽東京に行かなくちゃならなくなったの。
Oh, they're gonna be gone for a few days.
今から？
This was really abrupt.
もう着いちゃってるの。お昼には出発してたからね。
Oh, I guess it's like only a half a day's trip, I'm guessing. It's quite a distance to Tokyo from Hinamizawa. Gunning it at full speed down the highway would take 6 hours. Dad has a license, but since he doesn't like the highway, they likely took the train. It would have taken longer.
ケイチもお父さんとお母さんの話を聞いてたからわかるかもしれないけど、お父さんのお仕事の契約がね、今ちょっとうまくいってないの。
Now that she mentioned it, I did remember they talked about how his job prospects weren't looking too good.
お父さんはそういうのに繊細な人だから、このままだとお仕事にも影響が出ちゃうの。
Okay. Why does the mom have to go? I can understand the dad going, that's his work. Why does she have to go? Why leave your son alone. Like, even just normally. Even if it's a village. Like, I feel like you wouldn't do that normally. Part of my father's particularly fragile artistic personality. His emotions changed as easily as the sky fell. You could also say that he couldn't take criticism.
でも、そんなの電話でやり取りすればいいじゃないか。
圭一、お父さんのお仕事なんだから、もうちょっと応援してあげて。ね。とにかく電話よりも直接会って話した方が早いの。誤解もないし。
As their son, there was nothing more I could say once they started talking about work.
だから帰るのは明日の晩になっちゃうの。圭一、一人で大丈夫よね。
別に死にはしないよ。
圭一、死んじゃうなんて軽々しく言っちゃダメよ。心配事があったら相談してね。母さん、きっと相談に乗れると思うから。
Yesterday, I did bring up if I died rather abruptly, so I suppose they were a little worried. Really, I was more depressed by the fact that nothing would be solved by telling them. But I didn't plan on dying. At least, not while I still knew nothing. I would never allow it.
死なないよ。俺は。あがいてでも生き延びる。
そう。じゃあね。明日の朝、ちゃんと起きるのよ。朝ごはんは食べてね。お風呂と歯磨きも忘れないのよ。
へいへい。そんじゃ。
The call ended like that. Sometimes my parents went off to Tokyo for business meetings, but Tokyo was far away. They normally did things by phone. The times they did go were normally planned out in advance. It never happened this suddenly. I couldn't say that those circumstances didn't feel strange or rather unnatural. Anyway, I only needed to recognize the reality of the situation. That tonight, I was the only one in the house. That when my parents came back from work, I'd be gone. Missing. Vanished. Looking back on the series of events of the previous 5 years involving Oyashiro-sama's curse, it wouldn't seem that strange at all. Come to think of it, it was getting pretty late. I didn't think it was good that the only light on in the whole house was from my room on the second floor. It was the same as broadcasting to the enemy that my parents were gone and this was their chance. First, I ran to the living room, flicked on the lights, and turned the TV on to a reassuring volume. Next was the study. I similarly turned on the lights and some music. With this, from the outside, it would look like my parents were still here. Once again, I went through the house, checking to see if there was anything left unlocked. When I saw the veranda and the laundry still hanging out there, I went pale. That would have made it too obvious. I needed to take it down. I snatched down the laundry haphazardly and erased all traces that my mother wasn't there. It should be fine now. Ugh. It's a street game, so many of the scenes feel bad to talk over. Okay. Oh, as a stream game. Okay. The garage. They hadn't gone all the way to Tokyo by car, but they had gone up to the Okinomiya station. The garage was empty, wide open, and in plain sight. This was not good. I panicked and rushed out the back to close the normally open garage door. Should be fine now. I needed to get the paper. Mom always got the paper since they left in the afternoon. The evening paper was still out there. My premonition was correct. I pulled out everything from the mailbox and dropped it in the entryway. With this for sure, this time it should be fine. Come to think of it, leaving the cupboard busted like that for my little freak out was kind of bad. No, he opened the door so the presence is now inside the house. Even so, just leaving it in its current state wasn't good. Should clean it up a little bit before Mom got back and scolded me. Oh dude, that phone jump scared me. I cannot lie. I remember that there was a broom and dustpan in the closet. As I was going to get them, the phone rang once again.
もしもし、前原です。
あら、圭一くん？
Was that sarcastic? The phone jump scaring me? No, that was real.
お母様はいらっしゃいますかしら？
今ちょっといないんですけど。
You idiot Keiichi Maibara. Don't reveal that your parents are gone. You can fall up still, calm down, and take care of it.
すぐに戻ると思います。
Letting the presence inside the house? No. That wasn't a good response either. Now they might say they'll call again or to tell her to call them when she comes back.
なら結構です。大した話でもありませんから。では、失礼しますわね。
The scenario I feared didn't play out, eliciting a sigh of relief. That call was fortunate in more ways than one. I'd have to deal with any telephone calls coming in from my parents tonight. I was somehow able to deal with the phone call just now, but I couldn't continue to rely on such poor improvisations. I needed to make up a good story to explain that my parents were home, but couldn't answer the phone at the moment. They were making tempura and couldn't step away right now. That wasn't good enough. They were sick and went to bed because they weren't feeling well. Was that going to be safe enough? I was thinking about it on the way back to my room when the phone rang once again. It was like they were calling because they knew I was going to lie. I didn't want to pick up, but I knew I had to. They'd suspect my parents weren't here. I should have just taken the phone off the hook under the pretense that I didn't realize that it was. But since the phone rang, I had to pick it up. I prepared myself and lifted up the
もし
receiver.
もし。
I stopped announcing this was the Maibara residence. I had no reason to be kind to someone I didn't know the identity of. But unlike my uncouth voice, the person on the other side sounded goofy and lighthearted.
どうも、夜分遅くに申し訳ありません。私、沖宮書房の大石と申しますが。
大石さんですか。
前原さんですか。こんばんは。お元気そうで何よりです。
ちょっと待ってくださいね。
I grabbed the portable handset and rushed to my room with it. It was the same no matter where I was, since there was no one else in the home, but I wanted to be in a spot that felt just a bit safer when speaking on the phone with Uishi-san.
お待たせしました。
いかがですか、その後お変わりは。
Since then, when was that exactly? There was something about the brazen way he talked that rubbed me the wrong way. The last time I spoke with Uishi-san was 2 days ago. The day I stood home from school. I met Uishi-san on the way back from the hospital, and we headed into town for lunch and had a talk. Then, after that, Rena and Mion came to check up on me. Whenever I spoke with Uishi-san, they always knew about it. It was like that since the first time I met him. Today's phone call may well be found out by them as well.
もしもし、聞こえてますか、前原さん。
すみません。なんて言いました？
その後、何か変わったことはありませんかとお尋ねしたんです。お返事がないんで焦りましたよ。
特には。
The words stopped in my throat. There was a ton of stuff that happened. All of it baffling. What should I talk about? I didn't understand any of it, but I should try asking. If I didn't ask now, I may never have another chance. This night, when my parents weren't home, I had no guarantees I would make it through the night safely after all.
大石さん、やっぱり俺、命を狙われているみたいです。
本当ですか？
偶然の可能性もあるんですが、先日俺が病気で休んだ日、夕方にあの二人がお見舞いに来たんです。
あの二人？
レナとミオンです。そしてそこで大石さんと一緒に昼飯を食ったことを正されました。
それで
お見舞いってことでおはぎを置いていったんですが、その中に針が入ってたんです。偶然飲み込まずに済みましたが、これってやっぱり脅迫でしょうか？
その針は？
よく見かけるような普通の裁縫針のようでした。糸を通す穴が開いていて。
違いますよ、前原さん。針です。証拠になります。脅迫だと立証できるかもしれません。その針はありますか？
That's right. That's it. I dropped the receiver and rushed downstairs. When I tossed the mochi, I had overlooked it out of terror, but that needle was a valuable piece of evidence. Let's see, I threw the mochi and needle at the wall together. If it was there, then it would be on the living room wall. My prudent mother had cleaned that living room wall, and there was not a trace of mochi left on it. Could it be that it dropped in the gap between the wall and the carpet? I frantically searched by running my palm along the carpet, but nothing turned up. I tried moving around the sofa and desks, pulling up the carpet and then flapping it around, but I couldn't find that needle. Did my mom clean up everything without noticing it? It was just 2 days ago. I didn't know what they collected. I don't know what day they collected the burnable trash, but still maybe in the trash bin in the kitchen. I rushed into the kitchen, opened up the lid of the pail, and poured out the contents. But even at a glance, I could tell it would be incredibly difficult to find the needle in this pile of trash. I was looking for a needle in a trash stack. I know, I'll try. Running my hand through it. It was a bit gross, but I was looking for a needle. If I felt a small prick, I'd be able to find it. It was a pretty tactless method, but it was the quickest. I held my breath and started striking the pile of trash with my hand. Filth flew about. There was nothing more disgusting than this, but it was not the time to be concerned about such details. I continued on for a while, but nothing turned up. I wanted to search more thoroughly, but I was still on the phone. I shouldn't keep Oishi-san waiting for too long. Later, when Mom got back, I'd have to ask her if there was a needle. I hastily began scribbling on the notepad affixed to the refrigerator with a magnet. Was there a needle? I scrawled on the words with a red pen, and then dashed back up the stairs, where I had been keeping Uishi-san waiting for far too long.
もしもし、どうでしたか？
見つかりません。あの時はつい気が動転していて。
そうですか。見つかればでいいんです。保管しておいてくださいね。
That's right, the needle wasn't the only incident. I had to tell him about the morning with the hit and run.
あと大石さん、それだけじゃないんです。実は今朝。
That fan was definitely aiming for me. I could say that without question due to the circumstances at the
そ
time.
の車のナンバープレートは見ましたか？こちらでも探してみます。
Damn. At the time, I just flipped out yelling at him, but I didn't look at the plate. What failures on my part with the needle and the plate number. I was so focused just protecting myself that I let some of the most important details slip out of my grasp. I punched my pillow and noted how worthless I was.
すみません。白いワゴン車ってこと以外はわかりません。
Yeah, like did he not put the trash back in the bin?
仕方ないことですよ、前原さん。惹かれかければ気も動転します。
やっぱりこれだって偶然じゃないですよね。
Uishi-san started to hem and haw over on the other end. I could imagine him folding his arms.
レナの様子もやっぱり怪しいです。
それはどんな感じですか？
What Rena said on the way home today, asking why I was so much like Satoshi-kun. Now I could say it with confidence that Rena knew what happened to Satoshi. She knew that there was more to it than him simply
レ
disappearing.
ナは知っています。去年の鬼隠しにあったサトシのことを何か知っています。
それは具体的にどういうことですか？
レナが言うには、俺はサトシとそっくりらしいんです。このまま行くと、俺もサトシと同じ運命をたどると、そんな感じのことを言うんです。
運命ですか？具体的にどんな運命をたどるか言及しましたか？
天候と。
天候？
レナは、サトシは転校したって言ってるんです。で、俺もこのままだと転校しちゃうぞって。
Uishi-san let out a stern sigh and then grumbled loudly.
前原さん、それはおそらく何かの脅迫、もしくは。
俺もそう思ってます。
I thought he was done talking, my bad. At that point, I started to think. Would it be prudent to sum up everything that had happened up until now as the machinations of some human perpetrator? Other than the theory of it being Rena and the others, I was left with Oyashiro-sama's curse actually existing as the only other explanation. Of course, I couldn't tell that to Uishi-san. Except, Rena's strange behavior could be proof of either scenarios. Whether it was Oyashiro-sama's curse being real or everything being a part of a conspiracy committed by all of the villagers. Rena was involved. Rena had to know something. Rena was suspicious. What exactly was Rena? I couldn't help but think she was somehow involved with the prior string of mysterious deaths. I seem to recall that Uishi-san had admitted he had dug into Rena's past a little. He was probably just downplaying it when he said, a little. Meaning he had actually dug pretty deep, most likely. I wanted to hear about Rena. I wanted to know what had happened at her previous school, among other things that was still unknown to me. If Rena was somebody, I should still suspect. No, not that. I wanted to know the truth. Tonight, I was alone in this huge house. Even though I said I couldn't count on them, I had lost the security I felt I had just by my parents being around. It wasn't like this house was some sort of fortress or castle. If a malicious person decided to use brute force, they'd easily gain entry. There were no other residences close to the Maibara residence. No one would be able to hear anything, no matter how loud it was. Yeah, I mean, even just having people, even if you know they're not going to do anything, just having them is just reassuring. So I understand how he feels. I had never felt as much resentment towards my father's artistic temperament and the fact he had this house built in such a remote location as I did right now. I wondered if I would still be here by tomorrow morning, so I had to ask. Right now. Because I had no idea when the next chance would come.
大石さん、聞きたいことがあるんです。隠さないでくださいね。
Is the doorbell not ringing?
ええ、何でも聞いてください。
Even though he was so far away on the other end of the line, this was the most reliable he had ever felt. I wanted to ask about Rena, about what happened at her previous school.
実は、レナの
I noticed a sound that had been going on for a while now. Since I was so focused on the call, I hadn't paid attention to it at first, but I finally realized that was the doorbell. The time was 7 o'clock. It was past the time that the postman would be making a delivery, and past any sensible time for a neighbor to be visiting. I considered just acting like nobody was home, but that wouldn't be good. That would ruin all the work I put into making it look like my parents were home. I need to answer the door.
もしもし、前原さん？
すみません。誰か来たみたいですので、ちょっと玄関に行ってきます。
お客さんですか。すみません、すみません。今夜のお電話はこれくらいにしましょうか。
That would be a problem.
いえ、すぐ戻りますから。電話はこのままでいいですか？
はいはい、構いませんよ。
I dropped the handset on my bed and dashed to the door. I needed to make up a good excuse to get them to leave. I had a hunch it was the lady who called right before Ruishi-san did. In which case, it would be one of the neighbors who's friends with my mom. I'll just say mom isn't feeling well and went to bed early. That would be the easiest option. It would be hard for her to ask me to wake up my mom if she's not feeling well. The bell continued to ring at regular intervals. If somebody didn't answer after you rang the bell so much, you'd normally give up and go home, wouldn't you? Without removing the chain, I opened the door slightly, and you have a peephole. Actually, no, I guess it's a different door with new art. A chill ran down my spine. I knew it. Somewhere deep inside, I prepared for this moment. I had tried to escape by imagining it was the easiest person to do with. One of my mom's friends.
こんばんは。
レナ。
Okay, but he opened it with a latch. I hope that's how it is. There shouldn't be any reason for Rena to come over at this hour. The timing also made me feel uneasy, because it was just as I was about to ask Oishi-san about Rena. I wish I could have chalked this up to mere coincidence, but those unsettling words from Mion several days ago echoed back to me.
さーてね、おじさんにわからないことはないからね。
レナ一人。
うん。
It seemed that Mion wasn't with her. That didn't change the situation at all.
何しに来たんだよ。
ねえ、ケイチくん。ちゃんとドアを開けてお話ししたいな。レナは玄関に入っちゃダメなのかな？
It was true that speaking through a chain door wasn't the right way to talk to a classmate, but
うち、夜は必ずチェーンかけてるんだよ。気にすんなよ。
なら、仕方ないかな。
Rena looked at the ground sadly, but she kept smiling at least, and her effort to keep that smile up was quite pitiful. Even though she was tugging at my heartstrings, I didn't lower my guard. As long as I stayed like this, even if it made my heart ache, my life wasn't in danger. What I really feared, more than the possibility that hoodlums would assault me if I removed the chain, was trusting Rena enough to remove the chain, and having my friendship betrayed. As long as the chain wasn't unlatched, even if it made my heart ache, I wouldn't have to deal with being betrayed by Rena. Since it didn't seem like I'd removed the chain from her silent urging, she appeared to give up on trying to get into the entranceway.
さ、ケイチくん。ご飯食べた？
No, I haven't eaten. Since my mom wasn't there, dinner wouldn't be ready no matter how long I waited. I had laid down when I got home, was woken up by the phone, and didn't have a chance to eat since I used up all that time talking. I was gonna have cup noodles in any case. I could just eat one whenever I wanted to.
いや、まだだよ。それがどうしたよ。
じゃあよかった。これ見て。お惣菜とか持ってきてあげたの。
Rena held out a stack of boxes wrapped in a cloth.
お台所とか貸してくれれば、お味噌汁も温めてあげられるよ。
いいよ、そこまでしてくれなくても。
でも、お豆腐もお野菜もたっぷりなの。圭一くん、そういうの嫌いかな。
There's no way I wouldn't like that. I love miso soup with lots of ingredients. White radish, carrots, burdock root, and potatoes. Dense and fibrous root vegetables. Yeah, that miso soup looks incredible.
ご飯も持ってきてあげたから、レンジで温めればすぐ食べられるし。
Without a doubt, rice needs miso soup. Stuffing rice down your gullet, sipping miso soup in between ravenous bites. Oh yes, how wonderful it is to be born
それ
Japanese.
からね、またお漬物を作ってきたんだよ。今度は山菜のお漬物なの。
Before I had moved here to Hinamizawa, I scoffed at the mountain vegetables called sansai. But I was captivated by their charm the first time I tried them. Such a deep, yet light flavor. Those so-called supermarket vegetables taste rough and overpowering in comparison. If you had to describe them, they were the vegetables for the uninitiated. To become an expert such as myself, you first had to partake of sansai. It was common knowledge around here that the Ryugu family's traditional pickles were wonderfully delicious. No matter what kind of pickles they were, they go so well with that fluffy white
それ
rice.
からね、それからね。
But wait, there's more. So delicious. It just seems so delicious. Farewell to my unhealthy self who said he'd make do with cup noodles. Rena appeared to be in good spirits, and she was offering such a delicious-sounding dinner. The stress evaporated from my gut, and hunger reared its voracious head. At the same time, my wariness of Rena suddenly dwindled. Rena did say she was alone. It shouldn't be a problem letting her inside, though the possibility that it was laced with poison still hadn't been ruled out. At that moment, a cold chill ran down my spine, once again. I couldn't understand why such a sensation had occurred just then, but the voice inside me was sounding the alarm. This happy Rena, speaking of this charming dinner, was dependent on one premise, and that premise was that tonight dinner hadn't been made at my house, meaning it was under the assumption that my mom, who should be making it, wasn't here. At any normal household, 7 o'clock would be around the middle of dinner time. If my mom were here, we'd be eating dinner around this time as well. The fact that she brought it all... So I think right now, I think something is definitely sus earlier with Rena, but at the same time, I think this is like a big overthinking from Keiichi. I think that in his position, I'll probably be thinking of the same thing or something similar, but I think it's just a very big overreaction, and she genuinely did bring this meal to, try and make up for what happened. Unless she knew. Rena. Did she know that my parents weren't home? But there was also the chance that this was a bluff. I had turned on the lights and a bunch of other stuff to make it seem like my parents were here. There was a chance that Rena was unsure if my parents were home. But I had to wonder. The laundry, the garage, the evening paper, there were plenty of signs of them being hastily tidied up. It was hard to say that Rena didn't have a chance to determine if my parents were here or not. But there was no reason for me to confess that right now. I should try holding on to that fact as long as I could. First of all, the chain was still latched. As long as I didn't take it off, Rena wouldn't be able to do anything to me.
ありがたいんだけどさ、もう少しで夕飯ができるみたいなんだよ。
え、そうなの？そうなの？
せっかくで申し訳ないんだけどさ、
Unable to think of a good way to refuse, my words trailed off weakly.
でも、ちょっとはおかずになると思うな。
悪いけど間に合ってるよ。うちのお袋ってさ、結構おかずをいっぱい作るんだよ。だから。
おかずあるの？
With a smile that bordered on a cringe, I dodged her questions apologetically. But the feeling I tried to ignore began creeping up my back again. I spoke as if my mom were setting down dinner right now, but it didn't mesh with what Rena was saying. Rena was talking as if she was aware of some obvious fact, and that I was aware of it as well.
圭一くんもおかずとか作れるんだね。何を作ったのかな？
いや、別に俺が。
Rena had assumed out of nowhere that I'd made the dishes. No, not so much that I'd made them, but rather that my mom hadn't.
本当に作ったの？おかず。圭一くんが？
だから、俺が作ったんじゃないよ。お袋が作った。あ、いや、作ってるんだよ。今。だからさ、悪いけど、レナの持ってきてくれたのは食べられないんだよ。
Rena fell silent at that moment. At that moment, I felt like the light had suddenly disappeared from her eyes.
圭一くんのお夕飯。当ててみようか？
なんだっていいじゃないか。
ね。
The conversation might appear natural at first glance, but Rena was firmly in control. Felt like I was being interrogated.
そのお夕飯、お湯だけで作れるんじゃないかな。
おいおい、侮るなよ。うちのお袋のスペシャルなディナーを見くびるなってんだ。そりゃもう満館全席状態ですごいのなんの。
So, she didn't come outright and say, it's cup noodles. Is it something that could be made with just hot water? So I wonder how, like, I mean, obviously how they know this information, right? Because obviously she also knows that the parents are gone. At the same time, what information can they actually know? So instead, I looked like someone who was borderline hysterical. Rena showed no reaction whatsoever, even to that silliness.
本当にお母さん、ご飯作ってってくれたの？
いや、だから、くれたんじゃなくて、今作ってるんだよ。もうすぐ晩飯に。
Rena had taken that assertion of mine, that my mother was home and making dinner right now, and completely ignoring it. I could tell that the more I panicked, the colder Rena became.
ねえ、圭一くん。
At that moment, an uncomfortable chill crept in from the gap in the
お
doorway.
母さん、お家にいるのかな？
I couldn't keep up this charade anymore. Rena, she knew full well that my parents weren't home. But I'd come too far to admit that now. Anyway, my parents were here and we'd be having dinner soon. That was the situation I had concocted, so I answered. I told her she was here.
いるよ。もちろん。
I could feel the humidity drying out from the surrounding hair. Rena's eyes were becoming even more frigid, piercing me with their gelid glare.
どうして？
何のことかな？
I tried acting casual, but that facade was torn off me the instant I looked into Rena's eyes. That looked, it informed me of Rena's response faster than she could open her mouth.
どうしてさっきから嘘をつくのかな？
嘘なんか。
嘘だよね。
嘘なんかじゃ。
嘘だよ！
Rena's outburst sent a jolt surging through my body. Rena and I were still separated by what few inches that slightly ajar, but still chained door could afford. But despite that, I was still being cornered. My house, which I'd considered a safe haven up until now, had become more like a dark alleyway where no one could save
圭
me.
一くんのお夕飯、当てるよ。ね。
I knew now that Rena had already known my parents would not be here tonight. But it was still so strange that it had come to this. Even if she somehow knew that my parents weren't home, there was no way she should be able to guess what I'd be eating tonight. But Rena said she'd guess. How could she guess it? How could she know it was
カップラーメン。当たりでしょ？
that I was going to eat? With the cooking repertoire of a man who can't do housework is probably nothing but cup noodles after all. Looking at this statistically is probably it was the most probable answer. That didn't mean she was guessing.
ラーメンだけじゃきっとお腹すくと思うな。ご飯とかも一緒の方がきっと腹持ちいいと思うよ。
Calm down, Keishi Maibara. This was just a coincidence. Rena was just reading certain tells of mine. So the fact that she was interfering with what I was thinking alarmed me. But it wasn't as if she was actually reading my mind. If it was just being read, then she was a demon. No, not a demon. Things like that. They couldn't possibly
好
exist.
きなの？
ラーメンがかよ。
豚骨生姜味。
I wish I knew what that word said. Rena indicated that the point my answer was addressing was wrong. Her rebuttal was so short that I momentarily didn't understand the word Rena had spoken.
ごめん、レナ。今、なんて。
何が？
今さ、何が好きって聞いたんだよ。
It wasn't long before I regretted how carelessly I'd pushed forward with that question. It was such a simple answer. That was why I wasn't able to comprehend it.
豚骨生姜味。
I wondered how I appeared in the moments my mind went completely blank, until the moment I was able to recover. As my field of view began to distort, slowly swirling in a counterclockwise direction, I lost all sense of balance.
なんでそこまでわかるんだよ
I didn't even deny it. That was the type of frenzied state I was in. How could Rena know even this? Not even caring as I mashed my head against the door, I fixated my gaze on Rena, but she didn't even flinch when she saw me do
確かに
that.
勝った。まとめて勝った。俺が箱買いした。それがどうしてわかるんだ
なんでかな？不思議だね。だね。
How could you dodge the question at a time like this? The chain and the door was suddenly no longer
どうしてわ
protecting
か
me.
るなぜ知ってる答えろ
買ったのはセブンスマート。だよね。
A shiver ran up my spine. I tried covering it up with an angry
だ
facade.
からなんでわかるんだよ
ケイチくんの後ろ、ずっとくっついてたから。
何を言ってんだよ
Couldn't understand why she was saying she'd been following me all this
だ
time.
から、レナがケイチくんの後ろにずっとくっついてたの。
Like, that night? That night I was absorbed in my phone conversation with Oishi-san, and even sense her being there, standing behind the door, behind me, standing there, just like
ケイチ
that.
くんがいろんなラーメン選んでるとこ、後ろからずっと見てたの。いろんな種類を選んでたんだよね。それでお母さんに怒られたの。高いラーメンばっかり選ぶから、一種類にしなさいって。それでケイチくん、大好きな大きいカップの豚骨生姜味を選んだんだよね。レナも好きだよ。豚骨ラーメン。でも、大きいカップは全部食べきれないけどね。
My brain was paralyzed, dulling my senses. It might have been a defense mechanism to diminish the fear I was feeling to non-traumatizing levels. With the fear being diminished, the fog enveloping my mind was cleared away. Then, I could understand what Rena was saying and started to put meaning behind her words. Even so, my fear hadn't subsided completely. It was like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, eyes closed so I didn't have to look down. It didn't actually solve any of the basic problems. I slowly took a step backwards. And as I withdrew, Rena advanced.
だからケイチくん、ここを開けて。レナと一緒にご飯食べよう。きっと美味しいから。ね。
Rena's pale, slender fingers squirmed through the crack in the door, one at a time, as if they had a mind of its own, rattling the chain. She had unlatched the chain from the door. A feeling of terror would have just exploded within me. But Rena didn't do that. She was simply imploring me to remove the chain. I tried my hardest to light the fuse to the powder keg in my heart, trying again and again. Ladder. But it didn't light. It doesn't
開
light.
けて、ケイチくん。
帰ってくれ頼むから帰ってくれ
どうしてそんな意地悪を言うのかな。かな。
帰ってくれ帰れよ帰れ
The powder keg inside me finally went off. No smoldering. It just exploded. I tackled the door. The force through the door had knocked Rena momentarily off balance. I couldn't hesitate here. I grabbed the doorknob with both hands, planted my feet firmly, and pulled with all my might. But that slamming sound I so desired didn't happen. I could feel a tiny, disturbing bit of resistance keeping the door from closing. That source was Rena's fingers. Each of those fingers wriggling, squirming around like tendrils of a carnivorous plant through the crack in the doorway.
痛いよ
It wasn't a harsh shriek, but more of a yelp she was trying to keep back. I kept on pulling the door with all my might. I didn't even realize that if I didn't loosen the pull on my door, at least momentarily, Rena wouldn't be able to pull her fingers out. And that's why the door wasn't closing. I didn't care one bit for her apology. No matter how much she apologized, it didn't change any of what she had done up until now. It didn't change anything. Rena couldn't leave even if she wanted to because I trapped her fingers. Rena's white fingers had become deep red and were no longer even squirming. Rena's apologies were occasionally twisted with pain, but like a broken record, she was intent on repeating it over and over again. Go away, go away, go away, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it! I pulled on the door even harder. Finally, Rena's fingers were somehow able to slip from their imprisonment in the doorway. The moment that happened, the door closed soundly and I could hear a thud of Rena falling on her butt on the outside. I locked the door immediately, made a loud clunk voicing my rejection to Rena. Rena leaned against the door, apologizing profusely and nothing else. After confirming that I was sufficiently sealed off from her, I trudged away from the entryway. On the other side, I could still hear Rena echoing her apology. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Those pitiful words, they would forever be seeking my forgiveness. I didn't feel bad about this at all, but that wasn't out of any sort of malice. I just felt a hazy sense of relief that I was able to escape from Rena. Before, Mion had threatened me at this doorway, so there was nothing she didn't know. And just now, at the same place, Rena told me the same thing. My feeble attempts to disguise the fact that my parents weren't home had served no purpose from the start. I should have just pretended to be out and not even opened the door. My meager plans hadn't helped at all. In Hinamizawa, it was impossible to outwit them. Even though I was on the other side of the door, I wanted to get as far away from Rena as possible. One step, two step. With each one, her sniveling apologies became more distant. I sprinted up the stairs and dove into my room. As you would expect, I was finally no longer able to hear Rena repeating her endless apology. Diving into my bed, I was startled by the hard lump I felt. There was something in my bed? It was the receiver. I finally remembered. I was in the middle of a call with Uishi-san. Looking at the clock, apparently not much time had passed since I went downstairs. Could it be that my clock had run out of batteries? I talked with Rena for so long, how did almost no time pass? But the hand on the clock was ticking forward, every 1 second as usual. As I put the still warm receiver to my ear, time, which felt frozen, began moving once again.
Oishi-san, お待たせしてすみませんでした。
いえいえ、大してお待ちしていませんよ。
It became apparent that the amount of time that had passed between myself and Uishi-san was different. Over the phone, I could hear an energetic voice from a sports program or something. It drove home just how far away Uishi-san really was.
今、レナが来ました。
遊びに来たんです。
I wasn't confident I could coherently explain the situation to Uishi-san, but I didn't need to right now. Right now, I needed to know about Rena. That's right. I was planning to ask Uishi-san more about Rena. But Rena's little visit had interrupted the conversation. What was true and what was false, I couldn't tell. The one thing I knew was the single grim reality that Rena was suspicious. I might be able to figure out something if I asked Uishi-san about her. Up until now, I had regretted it whenever I forced myself to ask about things that I was better off not knowing. But looking at it that way, you could say I'd hit rock bottom. There was no possible way I could feel any more regret than I did right now. No, rather, I wanted to know if there was anything beyond this I would regret more. Forget about tomorrow. It wasn't out of the realm of possibility for something to happen tonight. I wanted to know everything I could. I was absolutely not going to die like this. Not without knowing anything. I definitely won't.
レナさんのことですか？調べましたよ。まあ簡単には。
I understood that Uishi-san was talking in circles. A bit meant I dug so deep it'd be hard to discuss with you since you're her
そ
friend.
の簡単な全てを知りたいんです。
あなたが聞いて面白いような話はありませんよ。
大石さん、
I spoke as calmly as possible to Oishi-san, who was continuing to avoid the issue. And then I said it.
竜宮レナは怪しいと思っています。過去の事件がたとえお社様のたたりによるものだったにせよ、竜宮レナは関わっています。
レナさんが怪しいと思える具体的な証拠があるのですか？
The manner in which Oishi-san spoke became very firm. Do you have some sort of proof? That was him talking as a
状況
detective.
証拠だけです。
そうですか。
I could tell even over the phone how disappointed Uishi-san was. Pulling on the fishing line when he felt a bite, only to reel in the bait. Disappointed, but ready to cast the line once more. That's how
大
it
石さ
seemed.
ん、目に見える証拠がなければ動けないんですか？
What I meant was, you can't come and save me without proof. I stuck that barb in there. As Uishi-san loved roundabout ways of saying things, he understood me just
大
fine.
丈夫ですよ、前原さん。あなたは私が守ります。
That was not the least bit reassuring. Uishi-san was just using me to continue his investigation. I was just going to get killed, and my corpse would be an important piece of evidence. That's all I was to him.
大石さんの捜査は俺の生死と無関係でしょうが、俺は死ねば終わりなんです。
Uishi-san went silent on the other end of the line. That may have been too blunt, but I didn't care. All I needed to relate to Uishi-san was that I was currently in a very dangerous
だか
position.
ら話してください、レナのこと。サトシは転校しました。多分俺もそれほど遠くない将来レナの言う転校をするでしょう。ですが大石さんには俺の死体を見つけることもできないでしょうね。現にサトシの死体だってまだ見つけられてない。
前原さん、どうか落ち着いて。
I was already suppressing my agitation, even without Oishi-san having to tell me. It wouldn't solve anything if I continued to scream about my mistrust in the police. It would seem like I could only depend on myself and the bats Satoshi left behind to protect myself. Then I at least wanted to know about what happened before Rena transferred schools.
つまらない話になるのは覚悟の上ですね。
Uishi-san, realizing my resolve couldn't be swayed, finally caved.
今の俺にとってつまらない話は何一つありません。お願いします。
まずいくつかお断りすることがあります。
はい。
他言無用でお願いします。また内容には一部憶測も含まれているかもしれません。すべてが真実ではないかもしれないということです。よろしいですね。
真実ではないかもしれない。
Damn, this is a long chapter. This is a 2-hour long chapter.
言ってる意味がよくわかりません。
Maybe even more.
ひなみ沢の連続開始事件は捜査本部がありません。
I don't think I've ever had a 3-hour stream before that I can remember. Actually, no, I've had 1 or 2, I think.
毎年の事件はここに扱われています。ですから竜宮レナが捜査線に浮上したことは一度もないのです。つまりですね、
レナの調査は警察としてでなく個人として行ったということですか？
ご理解いただけて助かります。話のほとんどは電話、もしくは会って聞かせてもらったものばかりです。ですから裏が取れていません。鵜呑みにしないでほしいということなんですよ。ご理解いただけますね。
全部聞いた話だけなんですか？
ええ、申し訳ないです。個人調査ですのでね。
あれ、以前レナのカルテを見たって言いませんでしたか？確かにそう聞きましたよ。
Uishi-san paused for a moment on the other end of the
そ
line.
んなことも言いましたかね。気のせいということにしてください。
I didn't care about Uishi-san having certain obligations and responsibilities. I also didn't care if there was no proof. Even if they were just rumors, there's no smoke without fire, after all.
話してください、大石さん。
わかりました。
Uishi-san finally opened up those tight lips of his. It seemed that Rena lived in Hinamizawa a long time ago. She had moved to Ibaraki Prefecture just before starting elementary school. Then, following that, Right after transferring, the unfortunate incident with the breaking of the school windows happened. Then Rena confided to the doctor. It was Oyashiro-sama. This was everything I knew.
私が知る話も前原さんと大きくは変わりません。
では、どこを詳しく調べたんですか？
I didn't need to ask. It was the incident right before she transferred back to Hinamizawa.
レナが起こした事件と、その後の医者での告白ですね。
はい。
大石さんは、その内容を知っているからこそ、レナたちを疑っているんですね。
ええ、疑っています。
やはり、レナたちが犯人。
ああ、いえ、疑うとはそういう意味ではないんです。
What? Oishi-san was the type of person to say things with confidence, but these particular words were less reassuring.
じゃあ、何を疑ってるんですか？
親代様ですよ。
え？
親代様のたたりって本当にあるのかななんてまあ。
Uishi-san's laugh was quite dry. Certainly not the kind that would make you want to join in. Uishi-san resumed the conversation about the dubious circumstances behind Satoshi's disappearance, the course of events leading him to delve into Rena's past. Just then there was thunder. Wow, the way that sounded, it really, like, I thought it started just pouring outside. Like, it sounded very realistic. And heavy rain started pouring down. It came without warning, a downpour fiercely beating the ground. I had left the window open in my room a crack to let the heat out. The violent wind danced into my room, making the curtains flap wildly.
あ、いえ、急にすごい雨が。すみません。どうぞ続けてください。
I got up while still on the phone and grasped the window.
はじめに事件と申し上げましたが、学校側も被害者も告発していないので、正式には事件ではないのです。でですね、この辺りがどうも関係者皆さん口が重いんですよ。被害者の一人は片目に後遺症を残すぐらい殴られているのにもかかわらずです。
Grasp the window. I don't like how they specify that he had to grasp the window.
学校側か、もしくは表沙汰になるのを望まない何者かがいろいろ根回しをしたのかもしれませんね。またカウンセリングを担当した神経科医も職業倫理に厳格な方で。もしもし、前原さん、聞こえてます？
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. There was the figure of a person standing by the light near the mailbox this whole time. Even in this torrential rain, they didn't have an umbrella. They were unquestionably drenched from head to toe. In the shower, which more resembled a waterfall, droplets of water dripped down from her hair. Just standing there, both arms dangling at her side. In one hand was a stack of boxes wrapped in cloth. Her eyes, focused on my room, focused on me as I was about to close the window. Her mouth was methodically repeating a chewing motion. It was as if she had something hard to chew in her mouth with her cheeks puffing out. What could she be eating over there? How could it be at this time I was more enthralled by Rena instead of the shocking developments being brought to light by Oishi-san? If it hadn't started raining, I wouldn't have gone to the window. Then I wouldn't have noticed Rena, nor would I have noticed that. Rena's mouth was moving in the same pattern. She wasn't eating something, she was repeating something. What was it? Was she repeating something? I'm sorry. To me? What was she saying? And why was I right up against the window, fixated on her?
もしもし、前原さん、聞こえてますか？もしもーし。
ごめんなさい。
え、前原さん？
ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
もしもし、前原さん、どうしましたか？
Even in this torrential downpour, Rena was still apologizing. The other self inside me drew the curtains hastily with my right hand, blocking my view of the outside. But even doing that, Rena's relentless apologies still reached my ears. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I forgive you for this. Will you forgive me for that? Please stop. Please stop. Please stop. Please stop. I'm sorry. 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 Damn it. Why should I have to forgive her? I'm the one who wants to be forgiven. What part of me can't you forgive? I won't be killed. If you won't forgive me, then I won't forgive you either. I won't forgive. I won't forgive. Won't forgive. Won't forgive. Won't forgive. Won't forgive. Won't forgive. I won't forgive.
前原さん、聞こえてるなら返事をしてください。もしもーし。
Interesting. Very, very interesting. End of chapter 11. Okay. Well, I don't think I'll be doing the tips tonight. I'll probably end up doing them tomorrow, I think. Let me just see. Split personality and then at the 7th mark. Thoughts. That was a very long section. Let's see if I remember everything that happened. So, he woke up, went to school for the baseball bat, right? He saw Rika and Satoko. He was in class and then just left immediately, was being followed by Rena. The things are apparently the same as Satoshi. But yeah, okay. I think from then on it's like he was at the house and then the things with the house happened. Okay. Can I look at the... No, I can't look at the log right now. Because I wanted to go back and see exactly what he was saying about Rena. What Uishi was trying to say about Rena. I think something's definitely off. Because like they say, oh, Oyashiro-sama is, taking over her or possessing her, right? Why can't you do exactly as I suspect? How do you relate to Keiichi, Surplus? Oh, okay, because women... Okay. I see now. I see. My bad. In the back of my head was thinking, like, she was gonna keep apologizing, but I completely forgot about it. It's very interesting. I also think that it's odd that, even if it's like, whatever is taking over Rena, or, like, normal Rena would not sit in the rain and apologize over and over and over and over again, right? So, like, just saying, I'm, like, so, something's wrong. But, I don't know what exactly is wrong. And I don't know exactly what her goal is, even. You know, I don't know what her goal is. It was, yeah. I, to be honest, thought that when he went to the window, like, it was gonna be he gets grabbed or something, you know? And that's why I said I didn't like how it said, oh, it showed that he was grasping the window, because I was like, he grasped the window and then he gets pulled out. And, or like, he, like, looks out and sees someone, like, climbing up the window and there's someone looking out. Like, looking, like, from the window. Rena has, no, she climbs up the house, you know? Like, I mean, they literally explained that she was, you know, that she seemed unnatural, so like she used her fingers to like dig into the house or something and start climbing up, like, or like just climb up through some means. That's what I was just thinking. Spider-Man, yeah, basically. And so when Oishi kept talking, I was like, that's not normal. Usually Keiichi has some input, so I really thought he disappeared. So yeah. I think, very interesting. You know, that's all I can say. I really don't know where this will go from here. I really don't. But yeah, tomorrow I'll definitely be doing the tips. I don't know how long tomorrow's chapter is going to be. Okay, yeah, this is chapter 11. So, depending on how long it is, I might have to cut partway through if I have to go to work. There's not too many left. Okay. Yeah, I can't imagine there's not too many left. I'm pretty sure based on the achievements, there's not too many left either. Like, yeah, I got 3 today. There's only 4 achievements left. And one of them is read all the tips in Onikakushi. It's like 1 to 2 more left, yeah. That's what I think. I think this is very interesting. And honestly, I am very intrigued about the mystery of Higurashi. But, I don't know if I can go through, 7 more, like, chapters, like, overall chapters of this, considering it took me, like, I guess when it's all is said and done, I'll probably be, like, 20-something hours in, which really isn't that bad in the grand scheme of things. Like, 1 chapter of Higurashi every Halloween. I don't mind coming back to it like every now and again, honestly. It probably won't be every. It probably won't be every Halloween. It probably won't be every like thing, but I'm interested in coming back to it every so often. So I'll think about it and see when I'm feeling up to it, I think. Okay. Well, I think with that, I will be done for today. It is, that chapter took 2 hours, so 3-hour stream today. So, that's cool. But yeah. We'll see if I end up streaming tomorrow, but we'll see what happens. So, yeah. I think I should be streaming, but if anything, it'll be earlier time, and might only be for an hour, but we'll see. Okay, well, I guess we also have to read the tips as well, so yeah, that's the stuff that has to be done. Well, thank you for everyone who stopped by the stream. I appreciate it, and I'll be back with more Higurashi When They Cry tomorrow. Tips are short? Well, it depends, like, you know, some tips can be slightly longer, but yeah. Goodbye, everyone!